right, welcome. This is Orion Rising. I am your host, Leonard O'Neill. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good morrow, depending on where in the world you are tuning into the show. Share this out, share this out, share this out. All right, hopefully my microphone's working properly. The settings are always messed up, so if you can't hear me, tell me. If you can hear me, tell me. And I'll have you guys tell me whether or not you can hear raw when I start playing the recording. Just because for whatever reason this computer's tripping every now and then. Didn't do it in the beginning, it just started doing it, in the last 2 weeks, right? I don't know why, but for some reason it doesn't want to work right. Denise, welcome. Casey, welcome. Share this out, share this out, share this out. All right. So it's Friday night, the law of one, right? Been kind of crazy because of the full moon and the energy that's going on now. Some of you know Jacqueline Taylor gave us a video talking about the energy that's going on. Brees, welcome. And the activation energy. And I didn't get a chance to speak to that, not even in the class. I just forwarded it to you guys in Returning to the Old Ways and in Law of One class chat. So you guys can watch that video that was sent to me by Jacqueline Taylor. And I wanted to talk about that because this is what we've been working for, not just myself, but worldwide, right? Thank you, Denise. Denise said I can hear you. Thank you, because I know I'm not talking to myself. Worldwide, this activation that has been the 3-year activation that literally culminated with last winter, if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, or your summer that you just finished, solstice, that just happened in December. And then starting January, I believe the 2nd of January, then the energy shifted, and the scientists knew about this. They were talking about the coronal mass ejections. That's what the scientific term is for solar flares. That the energy coming off of those solar flares happens all the time naturally throughout all of the stars. But what they're starting to realize is that energy actually is coherent in a way that they don't know about and are just now starting to figure out. So, some of you, if it was in a private group, in case you said we couldn't see the video because it's a private group. Oh, see, I wasn't aware of that because I can click on it and watch it. So I'll tell you about it then. I apologize for that. I'm in the group, so when she sent me the video, I just clicked on it. I didn't realize it was relocating you to a group. I just thought it was playing the video. So I'll explain to you what the video was about. And I kind of gave you a quick synopsis just then. It's about the energy. Thank you for sharing the stuff out and hitting like, guys. It's about the energy coming off of our sun, and I wanted to further that. So let me explain what the video said. First, the video said that this activation energy that has started, and it runs, it's just now ending. Today is the 10th, the 11th or 12th of this month. That activation energy is done, but the activation is like a slow burn. It's causing people to activate in a way, spiritually uplifting a large population of the planet is making a very big change. It happens all the time. In the 1960s, in the United States, just the United States alone, but around the world, you can see a certain change in all of humanity. Think about the way America was. If you're from America, you kind of know about our history. Think about the way that America was in the 40s and the mindset of the people living in the 40s, and then the 60s. That they blamed most of it on drugs, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, but you don't get a change that drastically changing more than just people who do drugs, unless it's something else. And sorry, now I'm being talked to. Now I'm being talked to in Messenger. I'll have to answer this Mandy talking about tomorrow, and I'll get to that in just a second. She said, "Now I'm confused, and I don't know why she's confused because I didn't think of any confusion, but I can't answer her now because I'm live. She'll have to wait now until I'm not live for an answer to that question." So quickly, now that she segued us, I'll do that, and then I'll go back. And I don't have the visual ready because I've been running meetings half the day, literally almost every hour of my day, except for the last 2 hours. And then I was preparing for this um, because tomorrow I'm producing in the group that I created, Ancient Aliens Worldwide, where I was informed today by Mandy Wilson, who is the curator of that entire group, that we are at 300 or 295,000 members. So we're about to hit 300,000 members. And every time we've been doing that now for the last 5 years, Facebook deletes 70 or 80,000 of our members and says, "Oh, those were inactive accounts." And this is the closest we've gotten to the 300,000 member mark. So we're hoping that by March or April, at the most, not even into May, we should be over the 300,000 um, member mark, unless Facebook deletes a bunch of our stuff again. And I want to segue into, so tomorrow we're going to be interviewing, well, I'm going to be producing. It's my group that I created, and I'm going to be producing, but I'm not going to be. You may not see me on camera at all, maybe at the very beginning, and then that's it. An interview with Jim Peniston and Gary Osborne, who wrote the Enigma, the book, and I don't have it in front of me. Otherwise, I could read it. Or I'll look on my phone here and read it to you. It's about the Rendlesham Forest, famous Rendlesham Forest. I always have a problem saying that word. UFO incident that happened a long time ago in the 80s. And Jim Peniston was in the Air Force, and he was one of the airmen that was on the base over in England in the forest and in Rendlesham Forest. And he responded to lights out in the, looked like glowing red light flying around, and it landed in the forest. So they went out to investigate. The military did. It was a joint military base, so it was English and American forces there. And the first responder were two men, one of which was Jim Peniston. And he was braver than everyone else. So he walked right up to this craft and actually touched it. And then instantly, messages were downloaded into his head that he didn't understand. They were binary code, which is what we use as the base for our computer, all computer systems on this planet. It is the computer language on this planet. I used to write that code when I was a teenager and into my early 20s before Windows took over, and even when Windows took over, before they upgraded from Windows 95 to the next one, 97 or whatever it was, the second version. We used to have to write code, 0, 1s, and 1s and zeros. We had to understand what that meant to tell the computer to do things. And then when they improved DOS and went to Windows, we were able to then use language, but we still had to write out all the code. And a lot of times had to write the 1s, 0s, and 0s and 1s. Now, you guys have no idea now, unless you're old, unless you're in your 50s or older, what that even means, because all of that's done automatically, even by your smartphone now. But the code was 1s and 0s and 0s and 1s was downloaded into Jim's mind, and he didn't know what it meant at all. And it was a long time before he decided to write it down, because it kept bothering him. So he wrote it down. And when he did, he needed help trying to decipher it. Gary Osborne, who is in fact a scientist, an Englishman, who he's living here in America right now, who is a scientist and a UFO hunter and a physicist and all this stuff, written 12, 13, 14 books now, got together with Jim Peniston, and they wrote a book called The Rendlesham Enigma. And that book was published a while ago, and since then Jim has written many other books. Gary has written many other books, and they both are speaking. They were on Ancient Aliens, the television show, and they speak everywhere. In fact, Jim is going to be speaking on Coast to Coast coming up next month, and I'm happy to say he told us today that I think it's George Norrie still doing it, but the Coast to Coast people wanted him to be on this month, in fact, and soon. And he said, no, I'm going to be giving an interview for Ancient Aliens Worldwide So a live interview. So I'll do your guys' interview next month. So he actually told us today he put off doing that show until March because he's doing in February tomorrow. He's doing our show. So we're going to have the two of them exclusively, the first time live that the two of them have ever been together live on an interview since writing the book, since collaborating on this book years and years ago. They've always been independent. People have asked Jim on, or they've asked Gary on, and they've talked about them about this. No one has done this. So it is an exclusive, worldwide first exclusive with Jim Peniston and Gary Osborne tomorrow on Ancient Aliens Worldwide on Facebook. And it starts at 2 p.m. West Coast time. That's 5 p.m. East Coast America time. From the 2 p.m. we're GMT -7. So that'll give you where you're at in the rest of the world. But if you can't figure that out, UK time is she put down 10 p.m., but that doesn't seem right. Oh yeah, 5 p.m., 10 p.m. UK time, and India time. So wherever you are on the planet, you can figure out what time that is. And you have to be in the group Ancient Aliens Worldwide to watch it. But it is not a private group, so you can't. Or actually, I think it is a private group now. We had to change it to that. So you have to go. I would say go ahead of time and join the group. As long as you're honest and you don't lie when you answer the questions, you'll get in, because we know that you guys are going to be coming in. If you don't like the group after that, you can always leave the group. So it's not like you're stuck in the group, but it's the only place you're going to see it live. After that, we will post it. It'll be on my podcast. For those of you listening on the MP3 file, you won't get to hear it live. You'll get to hear it in Memorex, right? You get to hear it in repeat. Now, I want to segue into, so that is tomorrow, and it's really exciting. These guys are going to be on, so don't miss that. I don't have the link handy. Like I said, I've been in meetings all day, and it's been crazy for me from the get-go. I was eating breakfast in a meeting, and then I forgot to do my medication, my blood pressure pill, and was going, why is my head bothering me? I feel like my head's going to explode. I was like, I didn't do my pills. So I had to go and do that, so it was kind of crazy. Okay. Crazy day for me. So let me segue into this. So then looking into, because we were talking about who's going to be listening into this interview tomorrow, because we're going to have some exclusive information, and we do have some books. So we did get from the publisher, I believe Mandy said 3 books. So we are going to be giving away the Renvolution Enigma books. And I believe those books, but it could be one of Gary's new books as well. I don't know which we got, but she said we got 3 books. So I'm assuming that's the Enigma, the Renvolution Enigma that we're going to be giving away. So if you guys haven't read that book, you might be able to win it during the show. So you got to tune in live, otherwise you don't get a chance to do that. And if you have questions, tuning in live is going to give you the access to asking questions to these 2 gentlemen. I've talked to both of them, and we've done interviews with both separately on Ancient Aliens Worldwide in the past 2 years. And you should watch those. We did Gary twice, 2 different times, and Jim once now. So it'll be 3rd time for Gary and the 2nd time for Jim in the last 2 years. I believe just in the last 12 months, but it could be a little bit longer. So you guys should check that out. So, okay. So now I want to segue into, because we were talking about this and who will be tuning in, I had said, listen, guys, I'll tell you right now that we're going to have eyes on us, and ears on us from the Pentagon and all over the world. And, of course, Jim and Gary were like, yeah, of course. And Mandy was like, what do you mean? I'm like, look, if they're going to be embedded, the FBI is going to have people embedded with Donald Trump during the January 6th debacle, just to discredit him. You don't think that they're going to be paying attention to what we're doing. And I cited, because I tracked this, just on one of the platforms alone, not on Facebook, not on YouTube, but just from Podbean, where I post my MP3 broadcast. Okay. I didn't look it up on YouTube. I didn't look it up on Facebook. I didn't look it up on Anchor FM, which is Spreaker. I just looked it up on Podbean. And my podcast is listened to in more than 70 countries on the planet, right? Okay, so whoop-de-doo, all right? But it tracks what country. someone is in on the planet, no matter how big or how small, if you have an ID on your computer or your cell phone, which every phone and computer has an ID that's trackable, it tells me where you are on the planet when you clicked on my podcast. And that's how I know what country of origin. It tells me the country of origin, like in the United States, it'll tell me the country of the United States. Then it'll tell me, Christy, welcome. Then it'll tell me the state in which you clicked on my podcast. And when I click on that state, it'll tell me what city you're in. It doesn't tell me who you are or where you are, but it gets down to the city level. And of the amount of people, just on that platform alone, the 100,000 people plus that have clicked on my show, there are 86 separate countries that are 86 sources that are supposed to be countries that they have no tracking for, but so they know that someone clicked on my podcast from 86 places that are not being recorded as a state, a county, a city, anywhere on this earth. And of those 68 clicks, there are 128 clicks on my episodes that have no tracking identification on this planet. So that means they're either governments, right, that are encrypted and you can't record their information, or they're off-world, or both. Okay, so 68 separate organic clicks from separate places, not from like the Pentagon. It would just be one, and it would say 68 times from that one. 68 separate people just on that platform with no ID, recognizable on this planet, clicked on my podcast, and of that 68, they clicked on 128 times. That means that more than one of them was listening to more than one of my podcasts. Okay, and they're not trackable, and that's just on one platform. I haven't even looked on the other, and that tells me what platform that you're on. Literally, there was 35 different platforms, from Google search to iTunes to even podcast addict, you name it, that you can think of as that is an application that is either on a phone, in your car, or a program that is in a computer worldwide on this planet. And there was like 35 different platforms. And of those different platforms, 68 were logged in that have no discernible destination. And on those 68 undetectable destinations, there were 128 clicks on 128 of my podcasts. Okay. So I said, of course, we're going to be listened to, because they are listening in just to my, and I was already told anyways, for off-world, that I'm being listened to by the cabal, by the governments, deep state, and off-world. Okay. Long ago, years ago, that I have people paying attention to every word that I say, who I'm speaking to, and all of that. Okay. So I just wanted to say that there was evidence of it. Okay, I looked that up on one platform alone. Haven't looked on the other ones. I didn't have time, but I got onto that one, looked on that, and went, look at this, guys. 68 undetectable individual organic places, and on those 68 different ones, and I haven't been able to discern which ones were clicked. It could have been one, you know what I mean? But of the 68, they all clicked on at least one, and there's 128, which means that either all 68 clicked on two, right? Or what? But they listened to my podcast. They listened to everything that I'm saying. So not only are we being listened to live, but that's after I'm live and I post it for the world on an MP3 file. So what's going on live? Who's listening in that are not being recorded? That's in the audience. That's obvious that that's happening as well. Okay. So tune in tomorrow, Ancient Aliens Worldwide. Tune in and watch that. It's going to be big, because they're going to be giving us information, both, including Jim, especially Jim. They gave us information last time we have talked to them in the last years that they never announced to anyone else in the world. Exclusive. Okay? So you're going to get some more exclusive information. Guaranteed. We're working on asking questions that we know they've never been asked. We did research. Mandy and her team did research and listened to like every podcast that had these two guys on it, listening to every question and coming up with questions that would either further those questions or know we're coming up with questions we know nobody's ever asked, right? We got Jim Peniston to talk about what the CIA knew last time about the spaceship, because I know what the CIA knows. They don't like that I know that, but I do. I used to have access to their computers. I'm locked out right now, and I haven't tried to hack in for years, but I used to be able to go. I talked about that before. I just would go in and look at all their stuff, and they couldn't keep me off of their website to save their lives. And they didn't seem to care for a long time that I was getting the information. So during the Gulf War, I talked about that. I went and took all the photos down that were the CIA satellite photos of what was going on in Iraq and Kuwait, and showed them to my family. And the next day, those exact photos, then the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Colin Powell, used those exact photos from the CIA satellite to show everyone on television what was going on and why, to justify us going in and invading, turning from Desert Shield to Desert Storm. And I laughed and went, those are right off the CIA's website. You must have got courtesy copied those, because I had those last night. I looked them up. So I used to laugh about that. I used to have all their phone numbers. That's not a joke. When Bush Jr. was running for president, I had the personal phone numbers and emails of all the chairmen of the Joint Chief, of the president, not just whitehouse.gov, but of the president. And when Trump was running, I was in communication with his sons directly, still am, directly. I talked to both of his sons during the debates and everything, not just on Twitter or through that kind of platform, but specifically, I don't know how I get this information. I'm lucky that way. People just kind of give me stuff. And I go, is this real? And I look into it, or I get briefings and people are like, this is actual, and you need to talk to this person. So that's kind of crazy, right? But I'm just the guy in the background that nobody knows about. Okay, so Christy, thank you for tagging people. Christy's tagging a bunch of people that need to come in and watch this show, so thank you for that. We are going to get into the law of one and pick up where we were last week, which was on question 11 going into 12 and 13. But I wanted to get the commercial out of the way. I was going to do that later, but then when Mandy messaged me and said, I'm confused, what time are we going live tomorrow? And I can't answer her. Maybe I'll do that while I play. In fact, we have to check anyway, so I'm going to see if you guys can hear Raw. So I'm going to go ahead and push play on that. And I'll let it play for a few seconds. If you can't hear it, let me know that there's dead silence. And if there is, I'll have to change my microphone. We have this issue. I don't know why, but for some reason we had this issue the other day, last Friday and the Friday before that, right? So I'm going to go ahead and press play, and I'm going to turn it up. Let me turn it up. I know that you guys can't hear it. It's turned up on this microphone. And when I stop talking, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to hit play, and I'm going to stop talking. If you don't hear anything, type in the chat, I don't hear anything. But you should hear Rob. I'm going to let it play. All right, here we go.
You may question me in any manner you deem appropriate. 13.11 Questioner. Could you tell me, taking the question previous to the one that I asked about galaxy and planets, would you tell me the next step that occurred after that step?
All right, so I let that play a little bit. If you heard nothing but dead air, please tell me that. I know there's a lag, so I have to wait for you. Louder, please. Okay, but we do know that it's working. Thank you. I'll turn it up. And I noticed the weird thing, this microphone is lower, and I don't know why. I noticed that too when I was listening to last week's broadcast. I was like, wow, okay, so the microphone hangs down about 6 inches, like I'm holding it up to my mouth right now. And I seem to be in the background quite a bit, but it's also lower. So let me try this now. Casey, let me know if it's yeah, see, Peter says, we can hear that. If you have headphones on, I'm sure it's going to be blaring. It is for me, but I'm going to play it again, and we'll see if it's loud enough now. I turned it up to like 60.
RA, I am RA. The steps, as you call them, are, at the point of question, simultaneous and infinite.
All right, so let me know if that's loud enough. I can turn it up. It doesn't matter because it's just in my ear. It's not blaring in my house. It's just in my ear, and so it's not so bad. What I did last time was I took the earbud out of my ear because I have it on a cord, and I just wrapped the cord around my ear and hung it down next to my ear where I could still hear it. So hopefully that, Peter, welcome, by the way. So, okay, thank you, Christy. So, and you guys can always turn your stuff up. All right. So, but what I'm playing you now is actually the question we were on last week. So, but he's asking how things work, and I'll let that play out, and then we'll continue from there. But I wanted to give you guys the promotion for tomorrow because this has been in the works. Our planning has been in the works now for several months, about 6 months, to get this to where we can get two of them in the same location for an hour or two, or longer if we can keep them. To do this on that platform because it has to do with aliens and disclosure and all that. Okay, and we're kind of talking about that right here with Ross. So let's continue. Okay, and if you guys are, I wanted to say I'm playing this live on Facebook on two places, Orion Rising and on my personal page, Leonard O'Neill. And that, for whatever reason, that if you're speaking in that chat and I don't say your name and say hi to you or answer your question, go to Orion Rising, the group. No, the page, because there is a group too, and that's mine, but that's not where it's live. The page, Orion Rising, and then go in there and start talking on the chat. If that comes in here for some reason, when I go live in two places on Facebook, it'll give me the page, but not, whichever one I click on first, it goes live there, and the other one, the chat doesn't come in here. I don't know why, but if I were to share it, and then you start a watch party and watch it in that group, all the chat comes back to here. So, but people don't know how to do that, so I put it in two places. And please share this to other groups so that other people can watch it as well. And thank you, Christy, for bringing people in. All right, I'm going to go ahead and continue and let Ra continue here, and we'll get into this and talk about the Law of One.
Okay. 13.12 Questioner. Could you tell me how intelligent infinity became? Shall we say, I'm having difficulty with some of the language. How intelligent infinity became individualized from itself. RA. I am RA. This is an appropriate question. The intelligent infinity discerned a concept. This concept was discerned due to freedom of will of awareness. This concept was finite. This was the first and primal paradox or distortion of the law of one. Thus the one intelligent infinity invested itself in an exploration of manyness. Due to the infinite possibilities of intelligent infinity, there is no ending to manyness. The exploration, thus, is free to continue infinitely in an eternal present. 13.13 Questioner. Was the galaxy that we are in created by the infinite intelligence, or was it created by a portion of the individualized infinite intelligence? RA. I am RA. The galaxy and all other things of material of which you are aware are products of individualized portions of intelligent infinity. As each exploration began, it, in turn, found its focus and became co-creator. Using intelligent infinity, each portion created an universe in allowing the rhythms of free choice to flow. Playing with the infinite spectrum of possibilities, each individualized portion channeled the love/light into what you might call intelligent energy, thus creating the so-called natural laws of any particular universe.
Now I'm going to stop there because I want to show back up to what they're saying here that I didn't get into last time. And most of you probably don't know about it unless you've read the Dead Sea Scrolls. Okay? In the Dead Sea Scrolls, and I don't remember which scroll it's in. It might be the Book of Truth, the Scroll of Truth, but that one's more about Jesus and this universe that we're in. However, when addressing the creation of the human race, in one of the scrolls, the being who created the human race, as we know it now, is called Error. And Error created the human race, and all that is with the ego and everything that is, and it was done in error. And then it says in there that because it was created by a sub-logos, and that sub-logos was then created by the logos, that it wasn't created by the one, but because of the one allowing error to give the gift of free will. Now, the reason I say that is because according to the Andromedans, if you don't know who the Andromedans are, you should look into the Andromedans. According to the Andromedans, when talking to, and I can't think of his name right now, you can see his face and I can't think of his name. My brain has been in work mode all day with coalition members and meetings. So I wasn't thinking about space, and I'll think about it in a second. It's coming to me slowly, so when it hits, I'll tell you his name. he's in communication with the Andromedans. In his videos, he calls them the A's because he doesn't want the algorithm to keep getting a hold of him and banning him. So he talks a little bit in code when he refers to Alex Coolier. Thank you. When he's talking about the Andromedans, he just says the A's, and they had said, now I'm being stopped. I'm going to try and push through as much as I can. If you guys, any of you out there who are mediums, you know that there are certain informations that can't be told to people unless they're ready for the information. But I know this information is something that people can have, so I'm going to push through. The Andromedans talk about this entire, what they would call an experiment, just like people do when they talk about America and free will in America being an experiment, is that the whole thing of, in the entire known universes, multiverses, of complete autonomy and free will was not something that was created by the creator from the beginning. And Ra talks about that it wasn't. That it was something that was considered through trial and error because things were not moving in a timely fashion. People were not, thank you, by the way, Casey, for sharing. People were not graduating and ascending and getting stuck because they knew they were, in fact, part of the one creator. And so the idea, apparently, was not an original thought from the creator, but an original thought from a different being who was a sub-creator. That when everybody, which is in a sense the creator anyways, because we are just individualized and we think that we're individuals and that we're not. We don't remember because we've been mind wiped because we're supposed to be here because of the law of chaos. However, that open and new thinking came up with the idea that the universe has now implemented. So in some ways, it is in fact an experiment. And an experiment that has worked for trillions of years and will probably continue unless another way is found to work and be more efficient. Okay? So the reason I bring this up is because you have Ra saying that this is how things were created, and there was a time before the veiling, and that came to an end because of what I just stated. People were not graduating fast enough. They were being stagnant because they knew, oh, I'm the one, man. They're all acting like a bunch of surfer dudes. Yeah, we'll get there, bro. I mean, you know, I'm God. You're God. We're all God, dude. So it's okay, right? We'll get there, bro. Hang tight, dude. I'm going to smoke a bowl and take a nap. And because of that, the creator said we need to put fire under our own asses. We're getting complacent and lazy. So someone came up with the idea, and the credit was given to Error, a female, by the way. Now, some say that all those scripts that were taken out of the Bible were not, in fact, thank you, Peter, were not, in fact, written by anybody about anything. Well, we know now if you read them that it was because of the narrative that was being taught. They were trying to get people from a monotheistic, male-dominated religion, the Hebrews, and trying to convert them. They couldn't be selling most of the scrolls, because most of those scrolls that were taken out, that were found in the Dead Sea piles, were telling of a one true creator that was androgynous, neither male nor female, but both, as one. So not even separate as both, as two, but as one. Both energies and both aspects of those archetypes that we have. So here we have Ra talking about that, and I didn't watch it all, so for those of you who sent it to me, know that I haven't watched it, but I will talk about, because I started researching it myself, and talk about the Thoth, because I've read all of the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, but this is a take that was like I'm doing, describing exactly what it is that Thoth is talking about. Someone doing what I'm doing to the Law of One with the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, and I have to finish that because it's very compelling, because it's also corroborating what I'm talking about now, that Thoth, talking about the 369 and the way to the God is through the center, and that's the 0 point that we all know about in science that a couple of different people have gotten onto, including in the modern day. Now we have Friedrich Nietzsche talked about it, but he was not the pioneer. The pioneer was Nikola Tesla, and now you have guys like Michael Tellinger, who's on the fringes of that and starting to hone in without any information about Tesla's stuff, and then a lot of other people like Emery Smith and a few others that know about Tesla's information in the modern day, myself included, that have furthered that, and the Melchizedek's, a couple of them, Drumbalo, the biggest one that has been working with that, and all of us have quit. None of us will work with them anymore because they're trying to weaponize this stuff. So there's corroboration in weird places, and I try to show this because people say, well, Carla probably made all this shit up, but there are certain things that she couldn't have known because we didn't even discover them until 2012 and 2015. More pointedly, the pyramids that are in the Dragon Triangle off the coast of Japan and the Bermuda Triangle off the coast of Florida, the United States. And that there are pyramids down there, and we filmed both. One in Japan, they've gone down and swam to it and filmed it in color. I've seen it; it's beautiful. It's a step pyramid. And then the one in Bermuda, I've seen radio images, photo images of it, and no one's gotten down to there with a camera yet to film it in color. But I've seen and there is an actual. That's not a step pyramid. That's a pyramid like the one in Giza. And of course, I've shown you guys the picture. It's in my opening number of the different pyramids around the world in China and Teotihuacan, Mexico, and Giza, and how all of them are exactly the same as a motherboard in our computers. So they're actually linked into the Earth and function the same way as our computer motherboard functions in our computers, because they're identical to the nanometer, and have this exact same function. And these were built all around the world. And if you read the Necronomicon, that's why I brought that up from 2 weeks ago, and then again last week. It talks about a scenario that happened that disrupted worldwide communication because the evil people in service to self, the nefariousness, who believes they're in charge of this planet and own it, were trying to do something with it. And that coincides with the same time period that Atlantis sank into the ocean, when they did something and it stopped the rotation of our planet. And of course, the crust on top of the magma will then continue because of inertia to shift. And that's what happened. And it totally flipped our planet over on its axis. And our planet is now flipped back up on its axis, and it's wobbling. And we're off 23.5 degrees or 25.3 degrees, 23.5 degrees off from dead 0 point. And Atlantis then shifted and ended up where Antarctica is now, and frozen over. And all of we went into an ice age, and that lasted for 10,000 years, which was told around the world by many people, including the Hopi Indians in the United States and the Aborigines that survived in Australia, and then South Africa and Madagascar, because they were far enough away from the poles when everything shifted to where they were in a tropic zone, or closer to the equator, or high enough up to where the deluge didn't affect them when it thawed and all of that. So that's all separate, but they're all starting to realize that they're coming together. Okay. Yes, we are. Casey asked, aren't we centering more now, though? Yes, and that's where I'm going with this. That was the beginning of the tilt. And when people say that guy's crooked, because you're crooked, you're not upright. And I talked about that when you're knighted. I was knighted by the Holy Roman Catholic Church, with the Holy Roman See. And as a knight, the information that you get from the movie Kingdom of Heaven is almost word for word the actual ritual of knighthood. And he says, and they say in there to you, be upright. And they mean upright, centered, upright, and also upright and honest, and speak the truth even if it leads to your death. Defend the defenseless always. The church is not listed as number one. You don't defend the church and politics first, right? So you staying upright. So our planet, as we shifted because of the corruption, all of the people here fell. Okay, they fell into almost a lizard brain mentality because we had pulled away from and were corrupted into being away from the light. And that is what you hear about people being away from the light and ignoring the light and being without the light of God or without the light of Jesus or whatever your religion is. It's part of your religion on this planet. All of the religions on this planet, including Luciferianism and Satanism, talk about this. So somewhere in your Talmud, wherever you're from on this planet, your creation story is identical anyways to everyone else. We've gone over that. And so in your creation story, it tells of a time of troubles, a time of tribulation, the Kali Yuga, the Ragnarok, the time of the end times or the apocalypse, or all of that is the same. And everyone's like, that's coming in the future. No, it's already happening. And if you read all of the Bibles, it tells you that the evil, whatever you want to call that, the devil, will be unleashed on the earth for a time. And then that time ends. So there's a beginning, a middle, and an end to that corruption. And what's happening now is that we've gone away from the god of war, Mars, the masculine energy of the Kundalini, or that half of the energy in our psyche on this planet, and we're shifting now. Women are becoming more aggressive and men are becoming less aggressive, and we're meeting in the center, which everybody who's, men who are full of testosterone, they're making all the men be sissies. And that's because they're an anachronism that should be put in a glass that says will break only in the event of war. And they're being aged out and going away, and everybody else that's being born are balancing these energies of war and peace. Hence the book War and Peace, by the way. And that whole book the whole thing is a lesson on the balance and being able to walk that line and balance war and peace, aggression and hope. And we're moving back towards, and as we are, our planet is slowly tilting back to upright and true. And while that's happening, the moon, which is what is keeping our tides flowing and our everything going here on the planet, is slowly moving away from us at exactly the same rate of speed that we as the human race are riding ourselves. This is what Raw is talking about even here. But right here he's talking, and Don keeps saying, how's that start again? How did you're gonna see that as I let it play. You're gonna see that he starts getting into what I'm talking about now. I always preface what we're about to hear with this so that it's not you listening and then me telling you this and you not remembering what Raw said. I've learned that if I tell you all the information first and then you hear Raw, I know someone say, well, you're telling me what I should be hearing. Well, if you don't want to listen to what I have to say, you just want to hear that, you can play it on your own. You can go online and you can find it on YouTube or read the book itself and make up your own conclusions. I'm here to try and help you understand what's going on. I'm not trying to warp your information, and I don't have an agenda other than getting everybody on the planet to free themselves and to be upright and to balance themselves spiritually and fix themselves so that they can ascend. Right? That's my agenda. And if that's not what you're here for, then you should be clicking on somebody else's podcast. So right now, Raw is explaining once again to about what's happening, but this is what's happening with us. So this. And it happens at the right time. Again, we're listening to this. Raw's talking about it. And it happens to be that we're having this energy coming from the sun right now that is changing and uplifting all of the human race in their vibration, right? Brianna, welcome. So I'll continue with Raw here and let Raw talk, because Raw's then going to go into, once they get done with answering the question for a third time to Dawn. Let's continue.
Each universe, in turn, individualized to a focus, becoming, in turn, co-creator, and allowing further diversity, thus creating further intelligent energies, regularizing or causing natural laws to appear in the vibrational patterns of what you would call a solar system. Thus, each solar system has its own, shall we say, local coordinate system of illusory natural laws. It shall be understood that any portion, no matter how small, of any density or illusory pattern contains, as in an holographic picture, the one creator which is infinity. Thus all begins and ends in mystery. 13.14 Questioner.
Okay, and again, really quickly, with the illusionary pattern, and with the, sorry, I'm getting messages again. I still haven't answered her. I was going to let it play and answer, but I may have to do that in a second. My phone just to me because she's talking to me and she doesn't remember that I'm live right now. So, but the illusionary nature and the holographic nature of reality, again, just specified that and just said that. So it's very important to know, because science has just in the last 4 years, I'll say that a second time, realized that a lot of our reality is in fact not as real as we thought. Ra had stated very early on, the moon, which is orbiting our planet, is not in fact really a part of this third dimensional reality that we're in. It's actually a hologram. So is our sun. Our sun is actually coming through from a higher plane. It's actually a blue dwarf star in the 8th dimension, and the energy's bleeding through down to the lower levels, so it's actually heating the 4th dimensional Earth and our 3rd dimensional Earth in the colors of that dimension. We're in the third dimension, which is the 3rd chakra. So the sun that is working on us right now is a yellow ray sun, which is the color of the chakra of the place of doing, which is the 3rd chakra from the bottom, being the red ray, then the orange ray, then the yellow. And so when you move up from that, you go to what? The heart chakra in green. That's the 4th dimension. And the energy coming off of this sun is in fact green. And the place of the 4th dimension, which we will be going into, is what do they at this point you're graduating from, like, say, preschool and middle school, where you're learning general education, and then you get into high school and you're learning more of general education, but it's a higher learning. And then when you go to college, what happens? You don't learn as much general education as you start learning certain things that you learn specifically, or you choose your path. We are now graduating from high school into adulthood, into a college, and the next level up is going to be love. And love happens to be in the heart chakra, which is the green chakra, and the rays of the sun are actually coming through as green in that reality. So our reality, if we humans, or we souls, are the microcosm and the macrocosm. I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. And everything in the universe reflects that on a micro level and a macro level. And they're starting to realize that as a race of people at this level of our understanding, and starting to go, wait a minute, isn't that good? Is there something to the fact that our sun is coming through as yellow? We just get lucky that we have a yellow sun here, that we need that specific life, and it feeds the place of doing. And we know that the yellow chakra is the place of doing. That there's no coincidences. Okay, so let's continue.
Could you tell me how the individualized portion of intelligent infinity created our galaxy, inaudible that the same portion created our planetary system, and, if so, how this came about? RA, I am RA. We may have misperceived your query. We were under the distortion/impression that we had responded to this particular query. Would you restate the query? 13.15 Questioner. Primarily, then, how the, shall we say, the planetary system that we are in now evolved? Was it all created at once, or was there first our sun created and this inaudible was created? RA, I am RA. The process is from the larger, in your illusion, to the smaller. Thus the co-creator, individualizing the galaxy, created energy patterns which then focused in multitudinous focuses of further conscious awareness of intelligent infinity. Thus, the solar system of which you experience inhabitation is of its own patterns, rhythms, and so-called natural laws which are unique to itself. However, the progression is from the galaxy spiraling energy to the solar spiraling energy, to the planetary spiraling energy, to the experiential circumstances of spiraling energy which begin the first density of awareness or consciousness of planetary entities.
Okay, so do you see how that works now? That's the logos, sub-logos, sub-sub-logos, sub-sub-sub-logos. Right? Co-creators. Okay. Right. Well, that's what I'm saying. Right. So yeah. So snarky raw. Yeah. Because I love that. Right. Snarky raw says I thought we already covered this because we had. I covered it as well last week. Right. But I love that we go snarky raw and they do that. They're because they're very, as a matter of fact, and they expect that we remember. So when Dawn doesn't understand something, he asks the question. I love how Raw says, "We covered this, bro. Bruh, how many times I gotta tell you, dude? We already know. Didn't you listen? Ha, shaw, right? I mean, I love it. He becomes some like this surfer dude, or he starts sounding like Sheldon, right? Right. So I think it's funny, and I love that Raw does that because that shows that even as a hive mind complex going about ready to leave the fifth dimension into the sixth dimension as an entire species, they've taken on a distinct personality, and there's still that personality that is individualized, even as a collective, right? And it's not until we get back to the one, and even then, the one has, Sheldon-esque, yeah, right? And the one has a very distinct personality as well. We just assume, that the personality is because in all the books and movies and literature, when you talk about, God or whatever the Godhead is, it's always, oh, that God is either, the God of do as I say, not as I do, and I'll kill you all if you look at me the wrong way, or the complete opposite. It's always ego or love. And there is no in between. There is no in between. Sorry, I'm sure you guys heard that in my ear. That's I'm being still spoken to, even though I told people on live right now. They're like, "Oh, okay, sorry. I'll talk to you later." Ba-bling, 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 blowing up my phone, and it's coming into the computer. So I apologize if you're hearing the beeps in the back. If you're not, then I'm just saying that, and I'm hearing it in my ear, and you're not hearing it on the show. Hopefully that's the case. If it were on a microphone open mic in the room on the computer, you would hear it. Sometimes it comes through or it doesn't. Okay. So yeah, right. Yeah. Sorry, Casey's answering something from in the chat. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, because Brianna needs some healing energy. I don't have permission to tell you everything that Brianna said, but if you're in the audience and you're watching, you can see the chat. But if you're not, you're listening on the MP3 file somewhere else on the planet. Brianna's making a comment about needing some healing, and Casey said she'll chat after the show. She sent healing energy, and so I am as well. And I'm sure most of you out there listening will as well. I'm just not going to divulge any information further than that because I don't have permission. Okay, let's continue.
13.16 Questioner. Could you tell me about this first density of planetary entities? RA. I am RA. Each step recapitulates intelligent infinity in its discovery of awareness. In a planetary environment, all begins in what you would call chaos, energy indirect and random in its infinity. Slowly, in your terms of understanding, there forms a focus of self-awareness. Thus the logos moves. Light comes to form the darkness, according to the co-creator's patterns and vibratory rhythms, so constructing a certain type of experience. This begins with first density, which is the density of consciousness, the mineral and water life upon the planet, learning from fire and wind the awareness of being. This is the first density. 13.17 Questioner. Does this first density then progress to greater awareness? RA. The spiraling energy, which is the characteristic of what you call light, moves in straight line spiral, thus giving spirals an inevitable vector upwards to a more comprehensive beingness with regards to intelligent infinity.
Now think about that and pay attention to that. Spiraling upward, okay? And then you have 3, 6, and 9, which are the spirals, the torus, not Taurus, the bull, Taurus, the torus, which is the sphere. If you guys have looked at any of my reels that I posted in the last month and a half, I'm showing you all of the energy that is surrounding everything, which is what the energy that the Jedi refer to as the Force. And everyone laughs at them and goes, there is no single, like some sort of coherent energy that binds everyone and that is a part of the natural order of the universe. And yet Ra is talking about that now, and science has actually realized since 2015 that the 3, 6, and 9 energy, as below, so above, actually exists and that there is an actual amount of energy in the universe on the planet that resonates from the planet, in the exact shape of a torus, by the way, a sphere, and the energy flows outward in a spiral and inward into a spiral, and it flips over on itself, and it comes back in and makes an infinity, a closed circuit or an open circuit, depending on whether you're talking about electricity or not. And it goes all the way to the 0 point and then reestablishes and reamplifies and goes out the other end and continues again on itself. And science is now, since 2015, has realized this is an actual thing. And if you watch my reels, I show you in the last month and a half, 2 months now, I've shown you several images, including the last one I did with the heart chakra, and showing you the 3 different ways of kinetic energy, vibration, and physical energy output, and involved in all of that. And I show you that in the auras, and I show you that in the toruses around every single object, including objects in the universe. In my opening show, during that music, if you're watching the video, shows you those same images, not all of them, but most of them, and it shows you everything in the universe and shows you that it's all bound by this spiraling energy that Ra is currently talking about. Let's continue.
Thus, first dimensional beingness strives towards the second density lessons of a type of awareness which includes growth rather than dissolution or random change. 13.18 Questioner, could you define what you mean by growth? RA, I am RA picture, if you will, the difference between first vibrational mineral or water life and the lower second density beings which begin to move about within and upon its being. This movement is the characteristic of second density, the striving towards light and growth. 13.19 Questioner, by striving toward light, what do you mean? RA, I am RA. A very simplistic example of second density growth striving towards light is that of the leaf striving towards the source of light. 13.20 Questioner, is there any physical difference between first and second density? For instance, if I could see a second density planet and a first density planet side by side, in my present condition, could I see both of them? Would they be both visible? RA, I am RA. This is correct. All of the octave of your densities would be clearly visible were not the 4th through the 7th freely choosing not to be visible. 13.21 Questioner.
And that's very important. So the 4th through the 7th are choosing not to be visible to us in the 3rd density. So they're here. But on this planet, there's only 4th and 8th. We don't have the 5th. I'm sorry, it's 4th and 8th. We don't have 5th, 6th, and 7th currently on this planet. But in this solar system, there are, there's no, so far as I know, there's no 5th or 6th, but there's 7th, 8th, 4th, 7th, and 8th on this planet and in the solar system. But then there's beings that are occupying higher levels, but it's not entire species, although at a higher level most of the time it is a species. Okay, so I know that's a little complicated for if you don't understand what's the dynamic of how things are working, then that's all confusing to you. But on this Earth, there is 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 8th civilizations in those, or 1st and 2nd are, they're here with us now, right? Trees, air, and sea, and water, and birds, and cats and dogs. Those are all 1st and 2nd. And then 3rd would be the sentient life forms, which there are many. People think the humans are the only ones. Dolphins are sentient. Whales are sentient. There's lizard people that live here. 7 different DNA strands, just like the human DNA strand. There's 7 different DNA strands of lizard people, greys, a couple of others that are here, but are not indigenous to here. Indigenous life forms to here, including 3 Bigfoot sentient beings. Like I said, dolphins, whales, 6 different whales that are sentient. There's more on our planet than that, but not all of them are as intelligent, but they're sentient. So in truth, there's 12 species of whales, 5 species of dolphins, however many species of these other animals that are here. So, right. So we're not the only sentient life form on this planet, in this planet. Okay. We think we are because we're on the outside, and the rest of them don't go to war with us. So since we're not actually fighting a war against them, trying to murder them, and they're not trying to murder us because most of them are smarter than we are, actually. The dolphins their brain is bigger than ours, and so are all the whales. They don't communicate with us because we can't communicate with them. We're not smart enough. They learn how to communicate with us when they want to, but the truth is that they most of the time ignore us because they're smarter than we are. That's not a joke. They know that now. Their brains are bigger. They know that their brain functions are more involved or more evolved than humans. So we're not the top dog. we're just the arrogant one. All right, let's continue.
Then how does the second density progress to the third? RA. I am RA. The second density strives towards the third density, which is the density of self-consciousness or self-awareness. The striving takes place through the higher second density forms who are invested by third density beings with an identity to the extent that they become self-aware mind/body complexes, thus becoming mind/body/spirit complexes and entering third density, the first density of consciousness of spirit. 13.22 Questioner. What is the density level of our planet Earth at this time? RA. I am RA. The sphere upon which you dwell is third density in its beingness of mind/body/spirit complexes. It is now in a space/time continuum, fourth density. This is causing a somewhat difficult harvest. 13.23 Questioner. How?
See, and why is that important? Ra's going to explain that. Why is that important? That's important because the third density life forms on this planet were supposed to have evolved already and ascended to fourth. Okay? But nature can't force us because we are the creator. So us not going confuses all of nature, and nature then tries to lash out, but because we are the creators and co-creators, we have the ability, and we are keeping this reality going here by being here. Okay? So we're supposed to be, that's the whole purpose of why there are wanderers here, because the people, the powers that should not be, learned a knowledge they weren't supposed to learn. That is the whole premise of the Garden of Eden. And then it was warped into, you don't want to know anything that we don't tell you, so that they can keep control over people. That's why that, if you read that story in any of the Bibles, it doesn't make sense that that Eve ate fruits of some sort. I don't care what you call it, because it depends on where you are on the planet, whether it's a grape or an apple or a pear or a cherry or a banana or whatever, it doesn't matter. Ate from the tree of knowledge. And so knowledge was bad. Do you see? That's what the churches for thousands of years now have been teaching, that knowledge, unless we give you the right knowledge, is bad. So we have to tell you the right knowledge. And unfortunately, that goes down to people, even at my level, to where we know that people who are uneducated or don't have the right capacity to transmute knowledge will then do crazy things, like in World War II in the United States, when America was island hopping in the Pacific Ocean fighting against the Japanese. They landed on an island just past Midway. There's an island out there called Midway. It's midway between this continent and the next. Another island out there, and made a military base there, an aircraft base there, so that they wouldn't have to have aircraft carriers and things to fight the Japanese military. They could fly from bases and bomb them with torpedoes and bombs, so that they could get into the war and get, because they had destroyed most of the Pacific Fleet and had to rebuild the fleet. So the Aborigines who were living on the island had never seen any other people from their island before, or off of their island. So, like when Cortez showed up in Central America, they thought that the Americans were gods. And when America left after the war was over, they flew out their planes, and the Aborigines that lived on that island were so simple that they used bamboo and constructed a replica of an airplane and parked it on the air landing pad, hoping that the gods who were here before would see that and come back. Okay? So they believed that if they made an effigy to the gods and put it on the airstrip, that would bring the gods back, because when the gods fly over, they would see the aircraft and come down to investigate. Did we forget one? Or are people stranded there? And then they would say, welcome back. No, we built this for you so that you would come back. And that's what happened. Somebody said, why is there an aircraft down there? And they landed and found out it was made of bamboo, and found out from the Aborigines exactly what I'm telling you that happened. So they were like, oh, you've returned our sky gods. Okay. So now let's go to the sky gods of Viracocha. Somebody came from landed in a spacecraft on the Earth, and the people there were building monuments and drawing pictures in the sand, hoping to get the attention of the sky gods, so the sky gods would return. This is why the ancient aliens premise is some of those sky gods were in fact not God; they were in fact people coming from another planet in third dimensional spacecraft, flying in space and landing on our Earth. Okay, no different than you and I, just had a little bit more advanced technology that nobody understood 2,000, 5,000, 100,000 years ago, but that now we have. And so we understand that technology, and when we look back on some of this information, we go, that was just some dude flying a spaceship, dude. That was a guy in a fighter plane landed there. Okay, do you see? So this is where you get to when I tell people, and this is where, what's his name? Obi-Wan said to Luke, you have to realize that most of the truths we cling to are directly related to a certain point of view. Okay. So a lot of what's being told in history can be explained. And a lot of people go, you just want it to be that. I'm a scientist. I don't want it to be anything. Okay. I want it to be solved. And if it means to say something and say, yeah, I have no idea, it must have been God, I'll say that. Right? But you have to also realize that to be objective and not be subjective, you have to look at things from an objective point of view. And that means and I spent, years in a think tank. Ancient Aliens Worldwide was a think tank for 5 years before we went public. And that's all we did was literally try to scientifically disprove everything. Okay, we were not trying to prove that aliens exist. We were trying to disprove that, because we were all scientists. Scientists don't try to prove a narrative. You have a narrative in your mind that's a thesis or a hypothesis, and then you try to disprove it every way possible. And if you cannot disprove it, then you say, well, it's compelling, and maybe we should look at it from a different perspective, because we cannot prove that it's anything else. And that's what everyone did with the UFO business. And it came to the conclusion that 10% of all the known UFO sightings and research is compelling. 10%. It's 1%, and then it's compelling. Okay, so to a scientific mind, a real scientist, not just somebody who goes, yeah, I'm a quasi-scientist, somebody who literally was going to be a nuclear physicist. When you do that, you have to get something to be proven. You have to have it be able to be recreated over and over. In fact, they have you do it 108 to 115 times. Okay, you don't just do it like I did that 3 times and got the same result. You have to do it over 108 times consecutively without a fail. If you have one fail after 107 successful endeavors, it's back to the drawing board and you start over. That's why science takes so long, because they literally are that specific in making sure. So I applied that, and all of the people that worked in the think tank applied that to looking for UFOs or looking for aliens in history, right? And looking for and saying, we weren't saying I have to prove, because the academic world to this day will tell you aliens do not exist. There is no definitive proof. But you have to realize that whenever somebody says those words, there is no definitive proof, they're lying. Okay, that's like saying, well, that's just a coincidence. Coincidence is a cop-out word that people use when they're afraid of allowing themselves to think of what is actually in front of them. That's just a coincidence, bro. Yeah, it's just a coincidence. That's just a word that was made up when someone didn't have any other word for I'm scared and don't want this to be true. Well, the same thing. When I don't want you to know something, there is no definitive proof that actually does that. Okay? Because they actually will tell you that vitamin C, there is no definitive proof that vitamin C does anything for your body. Yet anyone in the scientific community and the health food community will tell you that citric acid, vitamin C, is a very integral part of your immune system, along with other chemicals as well. Okay, but that vitamin C will keep you alive if you can't take any other vitamin. Vitamin C is the most important one to take unless you take too much of that acid. Okay, then it can have repercussions on your body. All right, but yet they'll tell you there is no definitive proof that vitamin C does anything for you. Why? Because it's in everything. It's free. You can get it from vegetables and fruits and all kinds of stuff for free. So therefore, it's not a medicine because it's just out there in the world for you. Because the human race, before pharmaceutical companies existed, the human race existed for about 1 million years on this planet without them. And now they're telling you you can't exist without them. Really? Let's think about that. All right, let's continue.
Does a third density planet become a fourth density? RA. I am RA. This will be the last full question. The fourth density is, as we have said, as regularized in its approach as the striking of a clock upon the hour. The space/time of your solar system has enabled this planetary sphere to spiral into space/time of a different vibrational configuration. This causes the planetary sphere to be able to be molded by these new distortions. However, the thought forms of your people during this transition period are such that the mind/body/spirit complexes of both individual and societies are scattered throughout the spectrum instead of becoming able to grasp the needle, shall we say, and point the compass in one direction. Thus, the entry into the vibration of love, sometimes called by your people the vibration of understanding.
So again, compass point in the proper direction, be upright. 0 point. Do you see? So again, the reference by Ra that we are scattered in as a society from pendulum swing and that is directly related to the gaslighting by nefariousness that has kept us in this perpetual state where they want to keep you with a low vibration. Everything on this planet is already designed to be a distraction to you. That is the purpose, the yin and the yang, the dance. That is the ego and the conscience that works on your consciousness. That's designed here. The trap of the mind is designed in this place for you to graduate to because you are a baby when you get here. A baby soul, literally. You have just become aware that you are. So therefore, you are a baby soul. Got poo-poo, got caca. You don't even know those words yet. You just know that you got something in you and it's uncomfortable and it's squishing in your butt cheeks. And you don't even know what they are yet. So you cry. And when you're hungry, you cry because you don't know what else to do. So you learn to communicate. And then from there, you start learning more and more ways to communicate. Eventually, you learn hand signals. You learn your eyes and your feet movements and your head. And then pretty soon you start learning that there's words because you hear people speaking. And you know what's going on. You just can't get your mouth to say those. And you learn that. Then you learn to crawl. Then you learn to walk. Then you learn to run. Then you start growing. And then you grow as an adult. The same thing is happening to you as a spirit, as a soul in this third dimension. Your physical body is playing out what your spirituality is supposed to be coinciding with. You're supposed to be growing in a positive way as your body gets older. In fact, we were supposed to live our bodies were only supposed to age to between 33 and 35 years of age. And there was a time on this planet when that's when our aging stopped physically and our spiritual being continued, our beingness continued until one day we were just tired. I'm tired, man. I'm tired and I'm coming to the end of it. We knew that. And it was time for us to leave this body. And you hear stories of people doing that, ancient Chinese and Japanese and Native Americans and Aborigines, more people that are, their cultures are more in tune with the earth and have been not as disrupted by society and integrated into this modern chaos thinking. You hear stories of that happening, and you also know that people lived for thousands of years, and it wasn't that their body kept aging for thousands of years. How would that happen? Because you would have somebody someone now who ages to be 100 years old. Could you imagine if they were 1,000 or 10,000 years old? They wouldn't be able to move, right? So their body wasn't aging. It was they were alive that long. Okay. Well, no, that was just because they counted things differently. No, they did count things differently, but there's only 24 hours in a day. Okay, and the calendar is the calendar. Okay, and it was the calendar then. It was just a different way of counting. There was 13, 28 equal moon cycles, months, and then that changed because the Romans, whoever was in charge, Octavius and Julius and those guys that got July, October, and September and December, they all wanted to have their months be longer, so they were taking days off of other months, and eventually they just took the rest of the days. There was only like 12 days or 10 days left, and they said, well, here, let's just throw those onto the days that aren't already 31 days, and then we'll just get rid of that month and only have 12. And that's what the truth is. That's the Greco-Roman calendar that we currently have. Okay, and it's not. There was a calendar on this planet that was done by the moon cycles, and people are like, well, why would we do that? Because it's 24 hours in a day. We should be going by the sun cycles. They were going by the moon just because of the cycle of the moon, and they understood how things worked better. And it was still, a day was a day, a night and a day, 12 hours a night, 12 hours a day, and they still counted. Look at the Baktuns, the long count and short count that was going on in Central America for hundreds of thousands of years before we even got involved or evolved in the Middle East and in America. Let's be serious now. And they still had more accurate counting of our planet than we do now. And they weren't on this Greco-Roman calendar. They weren't even on the lunar calendar. They were on one before that. It was the 3,630 some odd year cycle. Okay, that was the short count. The long count was 6 or 12,000 or something like that. So here again is the reference to this and to the soul aging, but then being corrupted. And this is what's going on now. We have been corrupted. We were corrupted. We are moving back towards non-corruption. The pendulum has swung. The Baktun 12 has ended. We are now into Baktun 13, only a couple of months into Baktun 13. But Baktun, a couple of months in their long count, but in truth, Baktun 12 ended in December 22nd, 2012, and Baktun 13 started shortly thereafter. But the energy is still fading from the warlike energy, and the energy, so that's waning. If you're a pagan or a Wiccan of any kind, a druid of any kind, you understand that with the moon cycles. And it's now waxing into the age of Aquarius, which is the feminine energy of the Kundalini, the other half of the energy that all races knew about. Anybody who has not work or spiral knew about that. And weird that we're just discovering that the spiral, the golden mean ratio, or the Fibonacci sequence, which is the other half of that, the yin and the yang, by the way, I'm not going to get involved in that. One is fractal and one is the smooth. And they're the same as the yin and the yang. They're the same as the other energies. And we're just now starting to realize, and that's a meme that I put where there's a picture that shows all of these drawings and spirals from around the world, and I write in that it's not just a meme, it's a reel, and there's music playing to it. It says our ancestors knew far more than we give them credit for, because they did. They knew more in the past with their no technology than we do now with technology, by far. And Ross is talking about that right here. So let's continue, because this has only got a couple of minutes left, and we'll end with the end of 13 today. On this session, I'm going to session 14 next week.
Is not effective with the present societal complex. Thus, the harvest shall be such that many will repeat the third density cycle. The energies of your wanderers, your teachers, and your adepts at this time are all bent upon increasing the harvest. However, there are few to harvest. 13.24 Questioner, I would like to apologize for asking sometimes wrong or in.
Now remember, this was in 1981 or 82, 81 still. This is in 1981, so there were only, at that time, and I think he might ask that question now, he's asked it prior, but I think he asked it again, how many people were at the last harvest? There was 34 people eligible to harvest in 1981. That's it. And at the time, we had 2.7 billion people on the planet. Only 34 were able to harvest, and out of those 34, all but one came back. Okay. That's kind of crazy. Well, and it was before that, too. It was in the last 75,000 years, and that one that didn't come back was Abraham Lincoln. And that's only because he was allowed to get credit for what he was doing here as extra credit. And a walk-in came in and took his place and became the president and got assassinated. And the soul that was Abraham Lincoln went to the place of recovery and reflection and was given credit still because that was a very old soul and he couldn't do it anymore and he was just distraught. And it wasn't because It was his time had come quicker than it should have because of how long he had been here, and his contract was coming to an end. I haven't really gotten into these details, but his contract was over, but he was still trying to stay here, and he was just burning out with the energy, and he was just not capable of doing it, and he was just ready to just say, hey, look, I just got to float. I can't do this. I know I signed on for it. And a wanderer said, hey, listen, I know I can do what he was supposed to do and change the course of the United States. Let me go. I went to the council and said, let me go and talk to him and see if he'll let me do that. And the council said, if he wants out of the contract, we'll give him credit as if he did it, and you finish it for him if he says that it's okay. So he went to Abraham Lincoln. Raw talks about this, so I'm not making this up. Went to Abraham Lincoln and said, hey, look, I'll finish this for you. And you're not going to be looked at any differently. You're going to get full credit. You've been here a long time and you deserve the rest. And he said, thank you, friend. Yes. And literally he just moved out of his body, and the other soul moved into his body, became Abraham Lincoln. No one knew the difference, but you can tell if you look at the photos of him, you can see that he was slightly different, and that he was dying because he was a wanderer, a walk-in. Not just a wanderer, he was a walk-in, because a walk-in is someone who possesses a body, and the soul that's in it leaves. And a wanderer is someone who comes here legally and is born in a body on this planet. Okay, I'm a wanderer. I was born in this body legally, but my soul did not grow up on this earth. Okay, I came here for the first time somewhere between 75,000 and 149,000 years ago when I got here. Okay. And I'm not going to be specific as to when. People ask me, how old are you? And I'm like, I'm somewhere between 75,000 and 140,000, 149,000. And people are like, oh, you're funny, dude. I'm like, you're older than that. We're all older than that. But on this planet, I've been occupying human bodies on this planet for over 75,000 years, but I'm not from here. I'm not indigenous to this place. And 80% of the people that are on this earth right now are not from this earth. Migrated to here, and out of that 80% that migrated to here, a good 60% are in fact wanderers. The population of this earth went from 2.7 billion people in 1981 to 7.9 billion people today. Almost 8 billion people. That's almost triple, right? Or it is more than triple. it's almost triple. So that's not just because we had this population explosion. Right. Well, where did all these souls come from? They had to have come from another place. Okay. They didn't all rise up here because they're not supposed to go here. So there are no new souls, right? That if you're here, you can go to the third here. And that's part of the people that are so broadly, because there are some people who have to recycle. That even if there was an epiphany today, they're not ready because they haven't put in the time to ascend yet. So there are humans that you know and that I know that just are not going to ascend right now. It is not their time. When you're first aware and you become on this planet, you become a human, it takes approximately 10 to 12 lifetimes for you to learn everything that you're supposed to learn to ascend. And if you're only on your first lifetime, second lifetime, third, fourth, fifth, sixth lifetime, you're not going to ascend. If I ascend to the fourth density, because it's not your time yet. You still have time to put in the third density. But you're not going to be here anymore when the majority of the people leave this plane and do move up into the fourth density. The reality that is here, that is being held here by the amount of people that are here, holding it here on purpose, are no longer going to be needed to be here. So all the people, when they die here in the third dimension, they're going to go to an off-world somewhere else that's outside of the solar system, because there is no third dimensional life form that's supposed to be alive in the solar system. So they will go to the closest solar system, and they'll be born there, whether it's human or whatever the third dimensional beingness is in that dimension. And they'll be mind wiped, so they won't even know that there was any. But they just wake up as a little baby and live there under whatever it is that the laws are that govern that world. And they'll never even know that they were here until after they know. Okay, so that's happened to some of you. You just don't know it because you don't have that memory right now. The Melchizedeks, that's why they get that title. They have all those memories. I don't have all of those memories, so I can't have that title of the Melchizedek. But I could if I really worked at that. I already know how many different lifetimes I was here, and I have vivid memory and have investigated myself where I pulled the name out of thin air and said I lived in this place and died this where on this spot, and I'm there, and then looked that up and found out that that was in fact is a person that did die when I said, and it was who I said. I'm like, that was me. I was that person. Right? They aren't always fun to see. No, they're not. Because when you see the deaths, like I was literally here in the United States in the Old West and was robbing banks. I don't know who I was or what, so I'm not going to say like, oh, I was part of the James Unger gang. I was so cool. Right? I was Billy the Kid. I don't know that, but I was a robber and I was robbing banks. And apparently the town folks set us up knowing that we were going to come and rob the bank. And so they all hid and pretended that they weren't there. And there was a bunch of posse and sheriffs and a bunch of people there waiting for us. And they ambushed us on the way out of the bank after we robbed it. And they slaughtered us. And only 3 of us got away. And I was not one of the people who got away. I died in the streets riddled with bullets. I had about 15 bullets in my body. And I fell off my horse and I laid on the street and I was being shot as I was laying there and I died. And I relived that when I tapped into the memory and I felt every bullet, all the pain, everything. And that one was pretty bad. And then I was in the Scottish Highlands and I was run through the stomach with a big, huge broadsword. And it literally came out my back, and then the person, like gutted me basically, and I fell over backwards and was laying in green grass with my feet up a hill, and I was laying over the top of one of my kinsmen who was dead, so I was going up and over his body and laying on my back, and I was laying there, and I could barely breathe, and I could feel the pain, and I was dying, and I felt water, because it was raining, water running down the hill, it hitting my left side of my face. I'm actually reliving this now as I'm telling you the story. And I turned and looked at the water because I was thirsty and realized that it was mostly blood. And that there were so many men who had died on that hill that the rainwater was mostly red with blood. And I couldn't drink it because I'd be drinking the blood of all of these warriors from my clan and the other clan that had died uphill from me. And I remember laughing. Because I couldn't even take a drink of water because I'd be drinking blood, and I literally, that's why the song from Metallica had some meaning to me as a kid when the lyrics in the song said, "Look to the sky just before you die. It's the last time you will." I lived that. I died that. And when that happened, this was 30 years ago, and it was in a dream, which turned out, because I investigated it, that it was a real person who died exactly where I said, when I said, in the year 1522 or something, or before that. No, it was 1251, and it was in Scotland. And I found the graveside of myself. And I woke up and stood straight up in bed and thought I was run through. I could still feel the pain of the sword that had been run through me and the piercing of that. And I was checking I stood up in bed, and my then wife said, "Oh my God, what's wrong?" And I was like, "Oh my God, am I bleeding? And check my back. Am I bleeding? Is there blood? Am I wounded?" And she's like, "No, you're scaring me. What's going on?" And I was like, oh man, my heart was pounding and I could barely breathe and I could still feel the pain, and it slowly faded away. And I told her what happened and wrote down everything we could, and then investigated it and found out that I died in exactly that spot. And I was buried exactly where I said that I was, and when I died. And I was like, that was me. I was that person on this planet, died in that battle. So there's a lot of that. And then I died here in the state of California as a Native American. And the scenario was very similar to the scenario that happened in The Last of the Mohicans, by the way. I don't know if they got that story from the Native Americans, but that story of a woman who they were trying to keep from me, and that I was fighting for, and I was killed because I wasn't a good enough warrior, and then I died and she jumped to her death. That happened in real life to me. And when I saw that in the movie, I was like, holy crap. And I had flashbacks and I thought I was just tripping. And then I found out that no, that's how you died. You actually it was here in California on one of the high cliffs, overlooking the ocean, and you were killed and your body was thrown over the edge. And the woman that you were in love with literally committed suicide to follow me. And that was the woman I was married to at the time. It's still a friend of mine now in this life. And we found that out because we were living in the area, oddly enough, where her parents were living in the area where we lived as Native Americans. I told the story before, but I'll tell it again for those of you who are here for the first time. And we were literally sitting out on their back deck, which was a 3-level deck, and the middle level had a spa, hot tub. We were sitting around the hot tub, and we were talking, and I knew that this was Native American land, and I looked at my then wife, who was down on the lawn, and I said, all of this used to be a meeting place for the natives. And she said, yes, I know. And I said, isn't that crazy that we're on that land, and this used to be a place where they gathered every year for ceremonies? And she walked up to where I was on the deck, and she was coming up the stairs, coming into where the hot tub was, and I looked at her and I said, welcome to my kiva. Please enter. And she said, thank you. And she said, I think I will. And her son, my stepson, was up above, and he freaked out. And he looked at us and said, what the fuck are you doing? And I was like, what? What are you talking about? He says, what language are you speaking? And I said, what are you talking about? And she said, are you okay? And she said, you are speaking some Native American language right now. You're not even speaking English. And I looked at her, and she looked at me, and I said, are we not speaking English? And she said, oh my God, we are not. And he's going, what are you saying? You guys there's something, what is going on? Are you guys playing a game on me? And then we switched back to English, but to us, we were speaking completely understandable to each other. And I looked up at him and I said, no, my God, we were channeling. We used to live here. We were here in this spot 200 years ago and died right off the coast here. And she was like, oh my God. And that's when we went to psychics and found out that story. And then years later, probably 10 or 15 years later, all of a sudden the movie comes out, Last of the Mohicans, and I see the scenario happen, and it's supposed to be somewhere in Kentucky. And I'm like, oh my God, I lived that. I was that guy who got killed. Mogwai killed me. It's crazy, right? So anyways, okay, let's continue. We only got about a minute and a half left.
Appropriate questions. It's difficult sometimes to ask precisely the right question. I don't wish to go over any ground that we've already covered. I notice this period is slightly shorter than previous periods. Is there a reason for this? RA. I am RA. This instrument's vital energy is somewhat low. 13.25 Questioner. I am assuming from this that it would be a good idea not to have another session today. Is this correct? RA. I am RA. It is well to have a session later if it is acceptable that we monitor this instrument and cease using it when it becomes low in the material which we take from it.
Right. Okay. So I am gonna address what you guys are saying. Let me get the last 45 seconds through here. I'm gonna go down from Peter to Casey and to Denise, and we'll discuss that. Okay. So those of you listening on the MP3 file, I'll read to you what they're talking about, and you'll understand where we are. Okay. So let me get the last 45 seconds of this session done.
We do not wish to deplete this instrument. 13.26 Questioner. This is always acceptable in any session. I will ask my final question. Is there anything that we can do to make the instrument more comfortable or facilitate these communications? RA. I am RA. It is well. Each is most conscientious. Continue in the same. Is there any other short query? 13.27 Questioner. Tom Flaherty will be here this evening and will be helping in the evening session. Is this all right? RA. I am RA. This is correct. I am RA. I leave you in the love and the light of the one infinite Creator. Go forth, therefore, rejoicing in the power and the peace of the one Creator. Adonai.
Okay, so Casey had said, she said, I saw some terrible things the first time it happened to me, but I've also seen a few decent ones too, talking about different regressions in her past lives. Yeah, sometimes that happens. I've talked about energy vampires. I'll do this really quickly, and then I'll go into what you guys are talking about here. Energy vampires, back about 30 years ago now, a little bit more than that, my then wife was going to the shop of a friend of ours that was called a fairy tale, which is kind of a play on words, right? Because it's about fairies and fairy tale. And she was going there for, I don't remember if it was a drum circle or something. And it was something, it was maybe meditation. I don't remember exactly what it was, but she was going that night and I was working, so I wasn't able to go. So I went to work and then came home in the evening. and she went on that particular day, and I didn't go. And they talked about all these guys. This man and woman showed up, dressed up like Egyptians, and we're talking to everybody, and we're looking at some of the people that were there in the crowd and saying, "Hey, I know you. I recognize you. You're one of mine." And they were energy vampires. They were evil. They were nefarious, and they were in service to self. And they were preying on souls that they had preyed upon 3,000 years ago. And my ex-wife now, my wife then, she looked into it because they had all gotten like all of their auras taken. None of them had any energy, and they were all sickly and just in pain, and it was horrible for everybody. And I helped them all. And that's when I started a class teaching people about energy vampires, because no one on the planet knew about them at the time, hardly at all. And I said, they're like, what can we do? They're going to come back out. And I'm like, oh, I'll take care of them. Don't worry about that. Right. So I taught everybody how to replenish their aura. If it never happens to you and you think an energy vampire stole your aura, I've talked to people about this, and I teach this to this day. Rose petals or rose oil in your bath water. Take a bath and put rose oil or rose petals or both in the water. The rose, an essence of rose, it will replenish your aura and help you to replenish your aura. It has other effects as well, medicinal. People used to cook with it and eat with it. In fact, one of the cakes that Arthur ate that was made by Guinevere had rose hips, rose petals in it, and Merlin warned him that, looking at the future and looking at yourself is kind of looking at that cake. Until you've tasted it, you don't know whether or not it's good or bad for you. And then, of course, and he bites it into it and starts eating it. And Merlin says, and then, of course, it's too late. Right. But sometimes horrible things happen in your lifetimes, and some of them don't. Right. Okay, so then Peter was talking about William Wallace, right? The clan in Scotland. The clan was known for the kings of the sword, right? So the warrior of the new world, right? So that clan, and he's saying that for a reason, because that was part of the clan that I was fighting for in that battle that I died in. Peter knows this about me. So he was talking about William Wallace and the Wallace clan and fighting in that battle to free Scotland. That eventually ended up at Bannockburn, where they eventually won their freedom. I was part of that. Died. I didn't get to see the victory of when Robert the Bruce turned against William Longshanks and got Scotland free. I died prior to in one of the excursions fighting for the New World, the new sword with Wallace. Okay, so then Casey had said, did you see them? Oh, it was because of your gifts. Oh, right. So at first, this is Casey said, at first, it was a healer that had happened to me, and I saw 4 different horrible past lives, like a movie reel. That's how they come to you. Like watching a movie, and you see yourself from 2 angles, inside and from the outside. So it's like a movie, but it's like a movie that you see first person and third person at the same time. So it kind of sucks because you see yourself get killed from the outside, and you see it and witness it from the witnesser and from the inside. She said, I later figured out that there was a reason Spirit was showing me this. There always is. You never are given anything without there being a reason. Nothing happens. There's no such thing as coincidence. Like I said before, that's a word invented by people who don't want to know the truth. They're afraid to go any further. Right? Then he said, I was told I was gifted, but I don't know what they are. I'm trying to, during meditation, hopefully I'll understand one day. You will, the reason you don't know, Denise, what your gifts are is because you haven't decided what you want to be first. You can have every gift. Every person can have any gift. We are creators. Okay, we are not just beings that happened here. Okay, so you have to decide what you're drawn to and what you want to do as a main thing, and then focus on that. But you're still wanting to have everything, and that's okay. You have to put them in order in your mind of what do I want. Do I want to be a healer? Do I want to be this? Or do I want to be that? And then decide what order you want those in, and the universe will give them to you in that order. But you have to be very specific, and because you're undecided, the universe is going to be undecided, because the universe only does what you tell it to do because you're in charge. Okay, so know that. It's just you have to decide what it is in your heart. What am I ready for? What do I want to be or become? And that's what you will be and become. Okay. In the cases that since then, I've seen like 2 more of my own, and there's a reason that they showed specific things. Yes, specific things, right? Let's see. I want so much to learn and understand, especially after watching Leo. Thank you. I didn't know I was gifted when it first happened. You never do, Casey. Casey said that part. You never do. You know, when you first start seeing stuff, you don't know that you're gifted. You go, wait a minute, what? So, and then Denise said, Jamie Watson Wolf told me that I could do what she does. I'm a healer and sensitive, but I'm confused. Well, see, that's again, I can do all that too. I do medium work. In fact, I do some of it here for you guys, and you don't realize that I do it. I do channeling. I do all of that, but you have to. We teach that. Get a hold of either Peter Kyle or Peter GV, and we teach that. We have groups that we teach that in, and Jamie now does in a group where she did a reading on me. Which, if you guys are in that group, you should go and watch that reading. She did me, and then she did Peter GV from South Africa back to back, and both were crazy, really good reads. In fact, she was tripping because Casey, you and I talked about this. Where she was actually seeing me in a spaceship and saying you're like a commander of this fleet in the spaceship, and you're not even from here. And she was like, "What?" And she's laughing. "Why are you guys telling me this?" She says, "What are you telling me?" So even it was even sounding crazy to her. But you and I just discussed this about you, just like day prior to that. But I didn't discuss that with you about me. But we were talking about you and your stuff. But she mentioned me. And and there is a reason for that. And I don't remember if it was Raw that said this, but it was someone psychic channeling said that there are legions, not legion like the devil legions, but legions of space warriors that are here, that are commanders of fleets that have been hidden because of who they are on this planet, and some of you are those commanders. And some of you are part of a larger consortium of 3D, 4D, 5D people who would be considered soldiers, but not warlike in the physical 3D. There are other ways of non-physical, spiritual, being a warrior and defending the light, where you're not actually physically attacking with weapons and laser beams and bombs and missiles. That's only in the 3rd dimension and all the octaves of this dimension. But there's similar things that go on that have to do with that. That's why we're starting to figure out magic and magic wars and things like that. And we're seeing that in movies and stuff like that. So, yeah, Peter's talking about the energy of vampires and in his life trying to bring him down. And it didn't work. Yeah, he's because of who Peter is, it's very difficult for them to attack him. They try. All nefariousness tries to undermine everything that we do at all times. That is what they try to do. That's what they do, right? So, and then Casey said, just like you, Leo, I found my own grave in real life, right? Isn't that kind of freaky when you do that? You're like, oh my God, I was that body that's underground right here. I occupied that when it was flesh, right? And it's kind of freaky when you do that first couple of times. After that, you start getting used to it. You're like, yeah, I lived many lifetimes. Right, so I had a past life 30 miles from here, from where you are now, where I am now. She says, and I found my own grave and my daughter's grave. Yeah, like I said, from where I'm standing right now, about 70 miles. I grew up less than 10 miles from where I died as a Native American and where I lived as a Native American. I lived on the same land. This lifetime, I lived on the same land I lived on a couple hundred years ago as a Native American. Died on. Isn't that crazy? But I'm now currently a little further north. I'm moving back down that area. So, yeah, so that's crazy. So don't be afraid, guys, those of you out there listening. Don't be afraid if you start seeing visions of this stuff in your dreams. Don't be afraid to say, maybe this is not just a dream. Maybe there is something, because first of all, everything you dream about is not like a piece of potato or some spice. That is giving you a nightmare. That might give you a sour stomach, but everything that goes on in your brain is because you're working on something knowledge about something that you're working on that is in fact stuff that you need. Your subconscious works on things and shows you, but it shows you things in parables and in imagery. So it's not a thought process, right? Penny says, damn it, I'm late again. Yeah, Penny, you got here just in time. You should rewind because you got here just in time because I'm about to go off the air this week. But you should go back. We finished session 12, just so you know, Penny. So or is it 12 or 13? 12, 13, whatever. We just finished it. And we're moving on next week. So we finished that out. But we talked about, continued talking about the evolution of the spiritual mind and body from the first to the third into the fourth and fifth. And then continuing showing you that including talking about past lives, past life regression, and how that influences in some ways our now. And because you have to realize this, and this is why I bring this up, as you're getting closer to the fourth density and you're getting through the third density in octaves, you're moving up in the octaves and you're getting closer and closer to graduating, or you have, but because there is no harvest currently, the harvest is going to happen, but because there isn't one, you will then return. If I died today, I will be born again really quickly. It used to be a good wait of 100 years before you are reborn on this planet, but that's changed now. You can die and come back 3, 4, 6 months later because it's so close to the end of the cycle that if I died today, I would reincarnate quickly into another body someplace on this planet. Until the harvest, and then when the harvest time happens, then unless I choose, because once you have learned, if you're a wanderer and you have given your, say I signed on for 75,000 years, at the end of the 75,000 years, if things haven't changed, then you have the right at that point to say, okay, I signed on for this, I don't want to do that. But most of the time the wanderers come back no matter what. That's just the way the person is who comes here as a wanderer. So that's why when people are harvestable, if it's not a whole bunch of people that's harvestable at the time, then that happens, where they return. Right? Sorry, I'm looking at what Penny said. Penny, that sucks. Well, it was meant not to be. So don't be distraught. She said I got laid off today. That sucks. But you know what? There's a reason for it. That stuff happens. There's going to be one door closes, another one opens. And I know that when someone tells you that, when you're in that limbo state, you go, yeah, right, okay, whatever, thank you. But just know that, don't fear. The fear will play way more on your mind, because the ego will tell you all kinds of, you're not going to pay rent, you're doomed, you're going to die, all your power is going to get shut off, you're not going to have food, everyone's going to hate you, it's all your fault because you suck. All those things are ego trying to make you utilize this and capture you in the moment, right? So don't do that. Just say, you know what, yeah, see there, right? Okay, that's good. Penny says, thank you all, but I'm okay with it. So there you go. So you got laid off, but in truth, you were probably ready to quit anyway because it doesn't bother you. Like, yeah, I got laid off. Felt it coming, right? So yeah, at least you're being, you knew that somebody who's nefarious decided that you needed to go. That's usually what happens unless you do something to where you get yourself into trouble, and then it's a choice you made. Those are the things. Those are the things that we have to stand up to. We have to become objective and go, okay, I'm the one who made this happen, right? And that's where I tell people when they ask me questions about how do I deal with people that are energy vampires or people that are hard to deal with that are nefarious. Show them, put a mirror up. So if you don't have a mirror to carry with you, which is a good idea, by the way, if you carry a mirror on your person, people won't tell you their life stories all the time unless you care and you're okay with people doing that. Otherwise, I used to walk around with a mirror in my pocket all the time in my mojo bag. Not a joke. I just don't carry it anymore. But people would always tell me their whole life story, and then they'd go, I don't even know why I'm telling you this. Well, because you can't help yourself. It's because of what I am. But I don't say that to them. But that's the truth of it. So that's one way. But then in the physical way, when you're dealing with people, is you have to show them themselves, and it doesn't mean that you're I have to give you the lesson. That's going to come in their own time anyway. Karma fixes that. But when when somebody says, oh, they're trying to get you to feel sorry for them. I lost my job, or I'm just using that as an example. Don't think that I'm thinking that, Penny. You just said that, so it was the top of mind. It was right on the top of my head. But when they say things like, I don't know what I'm going to do and pay my bill, and they're trying to get money out of you. Well, what is it that you did that you didn't pay your bill? Why didn't you pay your bill? Right? And when you get the truth out of them, you're going to find out it's not what they tell you. Well, I don't make enough money. Well, you don't make enough money. Well, then there's something about your life, choices that you're making in your life that are hindering you. You're either working at the wrong job because you're not making enough money, or you're doing something with your money that is not appropriate, and you're not paying all your bills. And when it comes right down to it, you're going to find out that their decisions are what's gotten them into trouble, but they don't want to work for it themselves. So what they work at is getting other people, controlling other people, and getting people to pay them money, loan them money. Do you see? And those are people that we call them passive aggressive. Those are people that are passive aggressive that don't want to do that. It's like the person in line in front of you in the store, and they pay with cash, and they're short by like $1 or $2. That's planned. They're short $1 or $2 on purpose because they're hoping somebody that overhears them goes, here's $1. Okay, and that's a victory to them. They see that, they do that on purpose. Rarely is it, 9 times out of 10, 99 times out of 100, it's done on purpose by nefarious people, not that one old lady who just happened to not have enough money. Oh, darn, I'll have to send this back. And they always pick the one thing that's going to wring your heart out. That's how you know that they're nefarious. Otherwise, they would take that candy off the table. But they don't. They take the milk off the table. Do you see? Because they're trying to get people around them to have bleeding hearts. You kept the booze, but you're saying, now I won't be able to eat breakfast because I don't have any milk. How about giving up the vodka, lady? Do you see my point? So you have to look at those things and weigh those out. I remember people running into me into a store going, hey, can you loan me a couple of dollars? And 90 times out of 100 times, these people are bullshit, and they're asking that. My brother was in LA one time, and he pulled up to a gas station, and there was this guy standing there in a 3-piece suit. And he was standing there and he was asking people for money, and asked my brother for money. My brother said, dude, I'm like no money at all. I'm about 1.5 a paycheck away from standing out here begging for money too. You're wearing a 3-piece suit, which costs a lot of money. And he's like, so what happened to you? And he's like, nothing. This is how I make money. I make over $200 an hour just standing here and asking for money. And my brother's like, are you kidding me? He's like, no, I'm not kidding you. It's this racket, bro. I make all kinds of money. Watch this. Some lady walks up. He's like, hey, listen, I ran out of gas and I need to call my girlfriend so she can come and get me some. Can you loan me like $5? And the woman gave him $5. Another woman walked up and he said, hey, listen, I'm trying to get the same spiel. And she said, I don't have any money, but hey, I got pizza. You want pizza? He says, I haven't eaten. She goes and gives him 3/4 of a pizza that she had. And he says to my brother, here, you want a piece of pizza? He laughed. My brother ate a piece of pizza. They both had pizza for lunch for free. And then he went in there and got his gas and came back out eating his pizza. And the guy was like, I make a couple $100 an hour just standing on this right here at this gas station and asking for money all day long. And I move so that the same people don't see me after a week or so. Weren't you here last week? He doesn't stay long enough, but that's what he does. And they film people like that. So you have to really look and take things on a case-to-case basis. But when you're dealing with energy vampires, it becomes apparent if you're paying attention, right? And you see that whole term again, it becomes apparent to you. It teaches you something because it becomes apparent to you. Our play on words tells us what's going on, right? And it does happen, right? It just does happen. Penny says, LOL, it happens. It does. But see, that's the problem is that we have that mindset. We need to change that mindset of, well, it's just that way. I can't vote because it's already corrupt anyway, and it doesn't matter how I vote. It does matter how you vote, because if everybody decides I'm not voting for that guy or that woman or those people anymore, I'm going to vote for somebody else. That somebody else is going to get in charge. So that's your civic duty of learning that you do have a voice and realization. They expect that you don't, that you all think you don't have a voice, that you can't change things. Just the way it is, man. Evil people are evil. And you accept that. When you accept that, you're being subjective. Do you understand that? You're being a subject. You're being a slave at that point. You're not being objective. And so you have to change the mindset of your reality and become objective about yourself and reality around you. And to be objective about reality around you is the understanding that this is actually an illusion, and they know it. We talked about that. Ra talked about that the information that is coming through that is working on your ego to make your ego make you live in fear, that doesn't work on evil people because they don't have an ego, or they have an ego, but they're not listening to it in the fear way because their ego is pumping them up and telling them that they are the greatest in the world. So therefore, the information that comes to their head is the true information that is we are taking over and that we're gaslighting these people. And that's how they all know to do the same thing. Okay? They don't teach it to each other, but it comes to them naturally. They gain that knowledge the same way you gain the knowledge you gain that they don't gain. And this is the thing that people don't get because they don't see it. Because I'm not privy to the information that someone else is getting. I just assume they're getting only the information that I'm getting. They're not. The information you're getting is tailored to whether your soul is in service to self or in service to others. Okay, so there is another half of this reality that you are not privy to whatsoever unless you look for it. And then you can see it and hear it. But you have to become in a place to where it will not affect you. And sometimes people think that it's going to. I remember when I was reading Mein Kampf, which is My Struggle by Adolf Hitler. There were people in my life that thought I was going to become a Nazi because I read that book, because they thought I was weak-minded and would be turned into a Nazi. And then later on, my ex-wife, but at the time we weren't even married yet, she ended up getting caught up with a cult up here in California and didn't know it until she was like, oh my God, I'm in a cult and I got to get out of here. So she called her dad. Her dad called me, and he and I moved her, went up and got her, moved her out in one day, took up a moving truck and loaded up her shit and brought her back down to the Bay Area. And I was reading the books that were the 4 or 5 books that were published that they based their cult on by their cult leader. And she thought I was going to turn into one of their cultists because I was reading the books. And I was like, give me a little bit of credit here, that I'm not corruptible in that way and that I'm not a sheep, right? And I read the books and went, yeah, I can see why people would fall for this crap, right? But that's the thing. They know, and they teach it to each other. And if they don't teach it to each other, they usually do it by proxy. Then they get the information, and they get the true information. You don't get any of that. You get all the fear. So you have to realize that. That's the first step in avoiding a trap, is knowing its existence. You have to see it, and then you have to look into it. And you have to be untouchable by it, which means you have to fix yourself. And once you start fixing yourself, then you will be able to start seeing that stuff for what it is. And that's the realization, like in the Men in Black, when they were trying to figure out, or he was basically telling what's his name's character, Jay, that there were aliens. And he didn't believe it. And they walked into that shop and he ended up shooting the alien dude's head off, which grew back, then solidified for Jay when Kay did that the guy was really an alien. And when he walked outside, it completely changed his thought process and reality, to the point where when he looked around, he actually started realizing that there were aliens everywhere. And because he learned something, and it changed something objective in his mind. And he was no longer hiding the fact from himself that all the stuff going on around him, that he was ignoring it before, pretending it wasn't real, and not realizing it until he had the solid information that said this is real. And then he turned around and looked and saw it was everywhere. And I mentioned that because I said that to my sister about the cabal and their symbols in company names and symbols that you see, like Taco Bell and Mobile One and almost all of them, company logos, and that they actually designed that on for a reason. Orion Rising, the cover of my book, and the symbol for my show, with the Giza Plateau at night, the words Orion Rising above that, and Orion, the constellation rising in the sky above that, with my name above that, has multiple meanings. It's ambiguous. When the Giza Plateau was built, the Giza Plateau above that in the sky, mirroring Orion's belt, is those 3 pyramids when it was built. And it was built at that specific time for that purpose. And then if you look around the world, you find that there are at least 7 major arcana, 7 major chakra, 7 other places on this earth that have 3 pyramids in exactly the same shape and exactly the same size, that also mirror, just like the one in Mexico from Teotihuacan, which is exactly in the same structure, and the complex and all the buildings around it are in the exact same places as the computer motherboard in every computer chip on the face of this earth that runs everything that is our technology. And those are exactly done in 7s, which are the same chakras, which are the same 7 arcana, Which are the 7 wonders of the world? Which are the 7 continents of the world? There's that number 7. Why? Look into that. Think about it. Okay? And all of them were built because they generated energy and gateways to other places and realities. And every person's, all the people that lived in those places that were around those said, this is what we were told from ancient times. Then if you read the Necronomicon, you see where they literally take you back. Someone plugs into, on a spaceship in a city underground, four cities underground, meaning a city on top of another city on top of another city on top of another city, to the modern day of when Nebuchadnezzar and Zoroaster were alive. And that information handed down to now in that book. And that somebody went into the city, below the city, below the city, below the city, and the technology was still working there. And they plugged into the machine and actually saw this event take place. And it was an event just like, and this is why I brought this up, just like when Casey was saying how plugging into this stuff, how you see yourself there and you believe that you're there, and me explaining to you that you see it from 2 different angles, not just being inside your body, but you also see it from outside your body, so you see it as a spectator and as a witnesser, or as the experiencer, which is the way all life is recorded. So when people do something and they say, well, nobody saw me do it, so it doesn't really count, it didn't happen. It actually does, because it's being recorded by the all. Okay, so that's being recorded with. So what you do, you're also recording, but if you try to hide that from the universe is recording everything that we do as well. Because we're seeing it from 2 different perspectives, because the only way, when you're pushing a rock uphill, you can only see the rock in front of you, yet the picture doesn't show a man pushing a rock uphill from the perspective of the man. It shows it from the perspective of the witnesser witnessing the man push the rock up the hill. And then I put in there, and it was the quote, it's not mine, I didn't make it up, that when pushing a rock uphill, when it's only at the top, when one can truly understand the journey. And that is the journey of the soul, pushing your soul uphill, your psyche uphill, your what? Uphill ascent of your ascension from becoming self-aware for the very first time, and then eventually becoming the pneuma, which you are, the spark of God, but becoming that breath of God, becoming the being. Do you see? So it's being recorded from 2 perspectives, yours and a third party, so that later when you look back at your life, you don't just see it only from your perspective. Why? Because all of our points of view are directly related to our point of view. So all the things we believe and think are the culmination of everything that we've experienced and learned. And that's only our point of view. So you also have to look at things from a different perspective from your own. So when you look at your life and you look back on your life, you get to witness your life. That's why it flashes before your eyes just before you die. So you get to re-witness it all again as you, the experiencer. And then when you go to the place of reflecting, you get to look at it from everyone else's perspective. Do you see? So it changes the perspective of your own life to yourself when you see it from a third person standpoint, not just from your own point of view. So when you're in this body, you have to think about that as well. You have to learn that. That's part of learning the travel, right? Yeah, see, and that's my point. That's what I was saying. Casey said, yes, I've seen them from first person point of view and also as the witness. Yes, that's why I made a point to say that, because earlier you didn't say that. You said, I've seen, different lives that I had and how I died. And I'm like, yeah, but when you see it that way, with your third eye or in a dream, you're seeing it from 2 perspectives, yours and the witnesser. You're the witnessee as the experiencer, but you're also seeing it from the outside perspective that is not being driven by your thoughts, that is a recorder. It's recording. That's what's in the archives. I was going to say National Archives. That's what's in the Universal Archives of Communication Records, or Akashic Records. Depends on how, potato. But that's how that is. When you go there, you see it from both perspectives. And that's usually how you get tapped when you do that. You get them both at the exact same time, right? Casey said, yeah, at the same time. You get them literally. So you get a split screen in your brain to where you're seeing it from first person out of your own eyes, and then you're seeing your body from another angle. And it's usually from the top down, but not 100% from the top down, because it's sort of from the side. It's off from the side so that you can still see who you are and what's going on around you. And sometimes it moves around you to show you different perspectives too. But it's always from third person and first person. But you only, when you're here, you only see it from your perspective. You have to ask other people what they think of you, or pay attention to how other people interact with you and talk to you to find out how they perceive you, because it is a matter of perception only. And that's why when you're taught, when I was in management, we're taught in management, it's not what you say to an employee, it's what they hear. Okay, so you have to be careful what you say and be very specific when you're talking to people, and that's one of the reasons why I'm a good orator, because I learned that at a young age, that you have to be specific about what you say. And that's why I talk in parable, because I do that, because one of the great orators in time have done that. And we've learned that if you're going to orate, the best way of doing that is speaking in parables, because different people, and I learned this as a manager going to manage school, going to school. I literally went to a school to be taught how to be a manager. And you're taught that people learn seven. There's those arcana again, 7 major archetypes, and people learn 7 different ways. And you have to be aware of that when you're teaching people, that you don't know how they learn until you learn how they learn. So that's you becoming aware of another person's perspective. And you can only do that if you don't have your ego running your life, because your ego says, I don't give a fuck what they think. It's all about me. They need to bend to my will because I'm in fucking charge. I'm the one they're going to listen to. They're going to do what I fucking tell them, or I'm going to find someone else to do it. And that is an egoic mindset of nefariousness. They don't give a fuck about you. They're going to use you. In fact, the more they consider you stupid because you're not getting what they're saying, the better off they are, because then they fool you and they lie to you and say shit and get you to do what they want and just use you up and throw you away and get someone new. They don't care, right? So there's the difference. So if you're in service to others, you want to learn that about other people. So the only way that you can do that is first you have to learn yourself. There's a book that's out there that my second wife let me read, and I sent it on to other people and told them to pay it forward, because it was also written by somebody who was a great orator in writing. And this doctor was, it's a love language, and everybody has their own love language. And what is that? It's what was taught to you by your parents and your grandparents and everyone in your life, of how the dynamic works between male and female. And depending on when you were born and where you lived in the world, your environment is going to dictate how you see things along with your experiences. So that's why people say, I married my dad, or I married my mom, or, what I mean, depending on whether you're a mom's boy or a daddy's girl, or a mom's girl or a mom's boy, whatever, right? You end up looking for one of those characteristics, or many of the characteristics of your family, unless you had a really bad childhood, a really bad life. Then you're going to try and look for something that's opposite of what they are, but you don't know what it is. Do you see? So your love language is something that you, again, have to look within yourself and say, what is my expectation for my spouse? And how is it that I can change myself to be more in tune with my spouse and get my spouse to do the same, so that we both have an understanding and communication, so that we can better our relationship. And you have to be aware of that. Again, the first step in avoiding the trap is knowing of its existence. So it comes to play in every aspect of your life, to be objective and to be honest with yourself, and take the criticism, and don't let your ego get offended when someone says, I hate that you leave the goddamn cap off the toothpaste every fucking day. It drives me crazy, right? Or you leave the towels wet, or you don't squeegee the fucking shower, whatever it is, right? I have a thing with people not cleaning and closing condiments, ketchup and mustard and things like that. That drives me nuts. Do I say that to every single person? Am I Sheldon? No. Sheldon would say that and go, ooh, and wipe his hands or wipe the thing and close it after everybody and offend them, right? I don't, but I see it. Sometimes I'll reach over and close it. Someone goes, is that a pet peeve? And I'll go, yeah, a little bit, because it dries it out. My mother leaves the dishwashing soap. It's open now. My mother leaves the dishwashing soap open, the lid open. That dries out the soap. It makes it more concentrated. It makes it harder to get out of the thing. Eventually, if you don't use it fast enough, it'll dry up in there. She also doesn't clean the lid, and right now the lid is blue because of dumping it and pouring it on stuff, and some stays on the lid, and it just stays there. It drives me crazy. So every now and then I go over and I wash it, get all the soap off of it, use the soap, because I recycle everything. I use that soap. It's now concentrated on the thing. I get it off on a sponge or on my hands, and I use that to wash dishes with, and then I clean it and put it away. Eventually my sister will come over and leave it open. Right? Or my brother, somebody will come over and they don't close it. I'm a Virgo. It drives me nuts. I don't harp on them and go, God damn it, close the fucking, right? My father-in-law used to get mad when people would get in his car and change the seat position in the mirrors and not put it back. Well, how are they supposed to know what's right for somebody who's 3 inches shorter than me, or maybe a few inches taller? How are you going to put the seat back in the exact same position? They have that program now where you can press a button, right? In some cars, you can get in there and press boop, 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 and it moves exactly. Everything, the mirrors and everything move to where you had preset and put down. But if you can't do that, you can't fix it. So he would get mad at my wife at the time because she'd go borrow his car and leave the mirrors where they were working for her. And she's like, how am I supposed to know where the mirrors are for you? And he's like, well, don't you have to just look at where they are and put them back to that spot? She's like, oh, so should I take a picture sitting here on my phone so that I know exactly the right angle to set it in? And so he had to come to the realization that it was just impossible and that he just had to fix the fucking thing. Get over yourself and fix it, right? These are the things, my point of all of this, and then I'm going to go for the day, for the week. These are the things that we all have to work on in this place, the many things. There aren't just one singular things. We're here in the school that is kindergarten through college. And most of our lives are spent in kindergarten through 12th grade. Okay? And you're learning general education. You're learning a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. But all of those subjects that you're learning are going to be individualized as you get older and you move up into the college level, which is the 4th through the 7th octaves, where you're going to be more focused on wisdom and love and those sort of things that are part of what we're learning now. Okay. Right. Okay. Denise says, my pet peeve is when you sit at the table, no one is seated yet, and one person sits down to eat and doesn't wait for everyone else to sit down. In my household, my father was a gentleman and he was teaching us children to be gentlemen. So we didn't sit down until everybody was seated, all the women especially first, and whoever lived at the house, if we were at someone else's house, we did not sit down until everyone was seated. And then if the woman was the one who was doing the cooking and the serving and she was bringing everything to the table, we would not sit down until that woman, the patriarch, right, of the family, was done and seated. And when she sat down like a queen, we would sit down. And if she got up, we stood up. And then she would go to do something and we would sit back down. And when she came back, we would stand up and wait for her to sit down and sit down with her. And that was the way I was brought up. It's not a joke. I was literally brought up as a European gentleman, royalty. My family is royalty, so I was brought up that way. Even though I was brought up more like King Ralph than I was, but all of that was trained into us. And my father would say, this is what you need to know for the old world and the old ways, and this is what you need to know for the modern world, the modern ways. You need to know both. And that was part of my Merlin training that I was getting from my father. My brother got the same training. Okay, and we're both ministers now. Right, I have the license. My brother hasn't gotten his license yet, but he is a minister and he teaches at Christian churches and does retreats for husbands and wives and Christians. He and his wife run a retreat for Northern California that they eventually moved into, and you know what I mean. Moved into the role of running it. Because at some point the people that were running it were having problems and they couldn't do it, and they stepped in and started doing it. Next thing you know, they took it over. And the church was like, okay, you guys got it. Just you're the new ministers. Do this. They're very involved, both of them, because of civics. They're very involved in the community on the boards. And I grew up the same way. I was on a REACT team as a kid. We literally would go out and help people that were stranded on the highways and help them, bring them gas, change their tires, do whatever. As well as earthquake readiness and fire readiness and all of this stuff. As a civilian, I grew up that way. My son did as well. So did my ex-wife. They were still doing that stuff not too long ago. So very active in the community, going to the school boards, going to all of this stuff that most people don't do today that they're starting to do now because of what's been going on. But yeah, manners are manners. But I'm also the person that looks down on people if you get mad because somebody doesn't know what fork is the right fork or they don't hold the fork the proper way. Because I know the difference between the European standard of that old world, new world, and the uppity American standard of cutlery. And they're completely different. Right. And so I'm like, well, which one are you going by? Are you going by the one that proves that I'm upper crust, rich, cabal? Because that's different. You know, the Germans knew American spies by the way they used their utensils. Americans knew German spies because they didn't know anything about sports. Right? So they had to start trying to learn sports, American sports, because all Americans during the 40s, during the Second World War, the First World War, were full on into all sports, from college level, collegiate level to the professional level, and they knew baseball and football and hockey, especially around the United States. They knew who won what, who played on what team, and what their average was, and the whole nines. And so they would drill people to find out, because Germans looked just like Americans. Let's be serious. They were the same people. One lived on this side of the pond, and the others lived on that side of this pond. The English were the same. So when you change the accent, the Germans knew, because they would teach the military upper crust or middle crust culinary, and that was upper compared to Americans. And Americans wouldn't know the right way to cut their meat, which hand to use the fork in, where we do things differently here, which they call barbaric. And then when you have some people that are here, they get mad. And then they were acting like they had a shovel. And they were just shoveling the food in. And I was like, really? So you're stuck on etiquette? That's what you're all about? Etiquette? That's all you got? Are you going to ascend with that? You know what I mean? However, manners are manners. If somebody is sitting there with their arms on the table and eating food talking with their mouth full and you know what I mean, and swilling beer or milk in their mouth with a whole full mouth of turkey meat, at the same time as open chewing the mouth open. Hey, so, I went to the store before I got here. And then wipe their mouth with a bunch of juice on it. I agree with you, Denise. That pisses me off. So manners are manners. There's a place and time for certain things. But these are the things that Ra is teaching us, some of them, that are also trying to expand our consciousness to the idea of looking at things from not just our perspective and getting used to expanding your consciousness to seeing things like we talked about in your past lives, where you realize that it's there. It's being shown to you in two different ways, but we only see it in one here. And our belief system, that was the lesson of the Jedi, was that all the truths we cling to are directly related to a certain point of view, and that point of view is yours. Okay, and as you ascend, in knowledge, you gain more knowledge from the universe, which is universal knowledge, and then you start realizing that your thinking starts becoming more in line with other people of the same vibration as you move up. And then that's when it tells you, okay, what I'm learning is not fake, because other people are learning it too. We all are, and it's not, in the ego and egoed people in nefarious will say that's just mass hysteria. It's just hypnotizing, because that's what they do to keep you from learning that stuff, and they know the techniques. So they always blame other people for the techniques that they're actually employing. Okay, and they'll say that that's what the other people are doing, and they're actually doing it, right? And you see that playing out in politics now. That religion, that one side always points to the other side and says they're doing this, and what they're saying that side's doing is what they're both doing to each other, right? They're both doing it. Because there is no, if you are a follower of politics, that is the religion of nefariousness, and that religion is control, manipulation, right? Is power, that is service to self. So that's why when somebody says to me, or you hear the saying, "Show me a lawyer, I'll show you a liar." Truth. Show me a politician, I'll show you a liar. Truth. Show me someone who is bought into, has a D or an R or whatever the letter is, whatever country that you're in. You know what the letter is. That is the party. That is either the conservative or the progressive party. Either one of those, it doesn't matter. One pretends to be for the people and one pretends to be for themselves, and they each say that the other one is really out for themselves, because the truth is all of them are out for themselves, and they just want control over you. They don't want to show you anything in truth. Right? Like here in the United States, you have the Republican Party, and Fox News is supposed to be the only people backing the Republican Party. If that's the case, then why is it that all the sensitive information, all the really good information, is only on their Plus channel that you have to pay $10 a month for? Why is that only the documentaries that have the good shit are only being told to you to promote it, to say these are on the Plus channel, where you have to pay us more money? Pay us more money, $10 a month, and we'll let you hear the real truth of what's going on. Otherwise, we'll just tell you there is a truth that we have, but you can't see that because it's exclusively on our pay-per-view channel, without saying pay-per-view, because people have gotten used to the idea that pay-per-view, wait a minute, I'm not paying you. Oh no, we call that plus or plus plus plus, or what is it the new one says, plus plus plus, 3 times plus, 10 times plus, right? Well, that's stupid. Yeah, but we're going with it because they're making a crockery out of it. They're throwing it in your face, laughing at you, and saying it doesn't matter how many times we put a plus in here, you're still going to pay us $10 more a fucking month for this content that we're not going to tell you the secrets unless you pay us this extra money. So I'm out for you guys. I'm not the cabal. I'm out for you guys. Okay, but I'm only going to give you this information until you pay me more money. Okay, so the truth is they're not out for anybody but themselves. Otherwise, they'd be telling you that information because we all need to know it, but they're not. They're telling you that information is there and then saying, pay me another $10 a month, we'll give it to you. Right? So everybody now has their Plus channel where they're giving you the exclusive content, brand new series that you don't get to see anywhere else that we already know is popular, like the Star Trek series, right? Or the Star Wars series, right? They got the whole Mandalorian and all that stuff. Yeah, it's only on Disney Plus because Disney bought the whole rights to Star Wars. So now you don't get to see that, right? And then Star Trek, same thing happened with them, where there's 2 series now that have been on the Plus channels that you got to pay $10 a month for to see. Otherwise, you don't get to see them at all. Oh wait, I don't give a fuck, because there's nothing that they're going to show on there or tell me on there that I'm not going to learn by ignoring their world and looking at the real world, because they're a distraction to keep me from learning what I'm supposed to learn anyways. Okay, so why pay all that extra money? That's like when they tell you got to pay insurance for your car so that if you get in a wreck, there's money there that'll pay for your car and the other people. Okay, but your car might break down, and if it breaks down, you're not going to have the money ready to pay for it when it breaks down. So pay me another kind of insurance, and that way we'll pay the premium, which then we'll raise and get the money back from you that we lose from you when your car does break down and you use it. They do the same thing for your insurance. I have insurance on my physical body. If something happens to me, I'm paying for that insurance, but that doesn't get covered everything. So now we have this other new insurance. It's called AFLAC that I pay into, that will then give me more money to pay for the stuff that the other guys don't pay for. That's all my money anyway, because I'm paying for it. But they get you fooled like they do from Amazon Prime. Pay me $45 a month and you can ship everything for free anywhere in the world all the time, because they know that most people don't ship more than $45 worth of goods in any one given month or year. So they charge you for it for the same reason that credit cards give you credit. They make it up and they give it to you knowing that they're going to make profit off of you. And then they have you believing that you're getting something for free when you're not. You're paying for it ahead of time. And then if you've overpaid, okay, if say I haven't paid enough, right? Yes, Casey, it's all bullshit. If I haven't paid enough and they to cover the cost and my car breaks down and it costs $5,000, but I've only paid in $2,000, guess what? They raised my premium and now I owe them more money. Why? Because now they need to make back the money because they've lost money on me. So they have to make back the money that I charged them by raising the rates. They do the same thing with your insurance. They raise the rates of your insurance when you get in an accident, so you have to pay them more money because now you're a liability because you got in an accident and you owe them money now. So now what you're paying is the money that you're going to pay them plus the money that you owe them. And that's how they raise the money. It's all bullshit. Netflix, look what they're doing, right? And he said Netflix does that. Cancels a show on the last season so that you have to pay to watch it on Amazon or wherever that because they're owned by the same companies, same parent companies, right? So you have to now pay, and they're doing that where they were losing money, weren't making money because people were sharing their passwords, and they just today announced that 4 countries on the planet no longer get to do that. And you have to have a designation of where that password is on, what computer is that password on that you're going to use, and what household. So it's either your television and that box or your cell phones and all that boxes. So they record the information that is the signature of those cell phone, laptop, television, iPad, whatever, in that location. And then you can't share it and look at, so you can't even watch your own Netflix unless you're watching it on your device that is already hooked up on their network, because they're losing money. And they've realized that they were losing money, and now they're like, we're going to make money. So now they're forcing everyone, and they haven't enforced it 100% in America yet, but they're gonna, because the rest of the world is going to put up with it. So it's going to be here in America too, if it hasn't already, and you're screwed. Look at, okay, Barack Obama, when he was in office, decided, he got paid probably hundreds of millions of dollars for doing this, obviously, otherwise he wouldn't have done it. He decided that all television signals in America need to be high definition. We're getting rid of all the other ones, and you have to pay money to get a new box that will make your television high def, or buy a new box or buy a new television to be high definition. So how much money do you think Barack Obama got paid by the people that were pushing high definition signal broadcasting to the whole world? Now, let's just go past that, hundreds of millions of dollars that he got paid for doing that. And they made it a law, and he just changed the law without anyone in America voting on it, and said now all signals as of January 1 of this year are going to be high definition. So if that's the case, when I buy cable from the cable companies, how come I'm paying extra money for high definition channels when all signals are already high definition? But we are. Okay. And what they did was, because I worked in the movie industry and I worked on authenticating images and video for most of my life. I did it as a profession starting in my 20s, and I continued doing it, and I do it still in some respects now for Ancient Aliens Worldwide and for the Ancient Aliens World. I did this literally for 35 years now, authenticating video and photograph imagery of everything up to and including, and mostly UFOs, spaceships, and that kind of stuff. Okay, but other things as well. Right, saved a lawsuit for a company that I was working for when a guy brought in a poster that was it was supposed to be a limited edition poster, which it was, but it wasn't one of the ones that he thought it was. It was a replica, but it was. They had the original title. I knew this because I knew the guy that was working on the set of Return of the Jedi. It was called Revenge of the Jedi, and they made some of the posters for the movie release. And Lucas realized that revenge was not part of the Jedi way. It was, in fact, part of the Sith way. And he said, wow, okay, we can't call it Revenge of the Jedi. We have to call it Return of the Jedi. But they still had given out some of those posters. So those posters became worth a lot of money. And people were remaking the posters and reprinting them and selling them as the authentic thing. So it wasn't the real McCoy. And this guy brought one in, and I brought it into the frame shop that I was working at, and one of the guys scraped it on accident because somebody dropped it and the glass broke and it scraped the painting. And he was like, that's worth millions of dollars. And he was going to sue the company. And I looked into it and I went to authenticate it. And I proved, because I showed, look, the folds are printed. Though these were all folded up. The ones that were given away were not rolled up. The ones that were put in movie theaters they're rolled up so that there's no damage to them. But the ones that are handed out at the parties by Lucas and Lucasfilms were always folded and handed to the people. So there was creases that would be in the imagery itself that would distort the paint in the imagery itself. And when people were then remaking them, they were making prints of the originals, and the folds were no longer real folds. They were printed replications of a fold in the paper. And I actually looked at it and said, this is not an actual Revenge of the Jedi poster. This is a reprint of one of those posters, and this is why. And I showed it to the people at corporate, and they were like, holy crap, I think you're right. And they took it to someone that was paid as a professional restorer of imagery, and they said, yeah, he's right, this is a reprint. This is not an original document. Because those folds would actually be part of the ink was folded up and broken up and damaged by it being folded. And this is not damaged. It's not even flaky. It's completely smooth. It's a reprint on this paper of that original. This is not an original. And that guy was really pissed off and said, then he tried to say that we switched it. And that we switched it to steal it from him. And then, of course, he lost, and he didn't go to court, and he lost it. But those are the things that you have to look into. This is my point of all of this. You have to look at things from a different perspective. You have to learn that and to expect that there's going to be, that everything that you see is not always what it is. It's what you perceive it as. Okay? So sometimes you think something's happening. That's why people say only believe half of what you see and nothing of what you hear. Right? I mean, that's an actual saying. Believe nothing of, none of what you hear and half of what you see. And that's an Irish proverb, as far as I know. I sound like that Russian guy who claims everything is Russian. But I believe it's an Irish proverb. And it's true. When you get these things into your head and you start to look at things, then you're being objective. You're being honest. You're not trying to see something for what you want it to be. You're being honest in what is it, not what I perceive it as. I know what I perceive it as because you're going to perceive that instantly. You look up, is that a spaceship? That's got to be a spaceship. right? But then you have to, in your mind, you have to go, no, well, all right, is it 747, any kind of known aircraft that I'm aware of, and then you have to go through your mind of the memory of all aircraft. Nope, it doesn't look like any of those. Okay, then what can it be, right? Do you know how many times that, especially in the modern era, in the last 15 years, especially in the last 15, where people have said, look, here's these spaceships that are doing these weird things over a city. I'm like, those are drones. Those are drones. Drones can't do that. Yeah, if you link the drones on a computer, you can program the computer to make the drones fly together and make different things. And no one knew that at the time. And now people are doing it. The Chinese did it for the last couple of, did it during the Olympics, did it, and now they're doing it at Super Bowls. They're doing it everywhere during fireworks shows all over. They got hundreds of drones being controlled by one computer, and the computer is having the drones make different shapes. Including geometric shapes, words, pictures, all kinds of stuff. But before that technology was widely known by people, those of us in the industry were like, that's just 6 drones. It's not spaceships. They're not moving like the traditional spaceships did. They're moving in patterns that are too slow, and those are drones. And then there were people like, oh, I swear, listen, you can see. I'm like, listen, you can hear the drones. I can, on this video, hear the drone motors going. I'm like, those are drones. And people were like, what? I'm like, turn up the sound, put on headphones, and you can hear the drone engines. Then spaceships don't make sound. Okay, the ones that are doing all those maneuvers and jumping around in the sky, no sound. That's one of the things that scares the people, right? So as soon as you hear sound, then it's using friction. It's using a motor of some kind that is using heat, displacing movement for some other reason. Vimanas did that, but Vimanas did that with propellers and coolant in using mercury. That's why Die Glocke, the bell, used mercury and plasma. Okay, and that's where the Foo Fighters showed up, because they were plasma, and then the bell, they couldn't control it though, but that was part of the whole Philadelphia experiment, the technology, not the bells itself, but the technology that was running the bells. And that whole thing, the reason that that's no longer being worked on is because they've actually perfected what that was. But I talked about that today, where when they were coming out with these pictures from the Defense Department, which I have in my videos on Ancient Aliens Worldwide, long before the TV show broke them to the world. We already got them through the same Freedom of Information Act, and broke those wide 2 years before the TV show all of a sudden started showing them. Started using our stuff in the TV show, which if you're an Ancient Aliens Worldwide, you're used to that. For the last 8 years, Ancient Aliens Worldwide takes most of their concepts for the shows that they make from our conversations that happen in our group. That's no joke. They've been doing that the entire time. We know that. We're okay with it, because we're still trying to get the information out there. So if we assist them in giving them information to where they go, hey, that's a good idea, we could really do a show on that. And then they extrapolate out from that and do something slightly different. But we can tell that it was spawned from our conversation. Everybody can say, it's another one of our conversations that we had 6 months ago that's now an episode. And it wasn't because they were testing out the knowledge, or we just happened to get lucky 100% of the time, like for 5 seasons straight. Anyway, so I think that's hilarious. But they had a picture that was done from the Defense Department from a U.S. aircraft here in California, and the picture shows this aircraft spaceship, and there's this white ring around it. They're like, that is cold. It's not even hot. So they're not using, some engine that has friction. I'm like, yeah, they're not. I already know the answer to that, because you guys do too. Because I was given a document that came from a documentation from the CIA that was given to pilots that had theoretical engines in them, and had the specs of these theoretical engines that didn't really exist, that I know do exist. And one of the signatures of an engine, because everything that we have is based on friction, so it's a heat signature for every engine. But there are engines out there that are not based in that spectrum. And I talked about this. I haven't talked about this now for years. So most of the videos that I talked about this have been deleted. But the free energy is not in the friction side of energy. The friction side of energy is the fractal inside of energy. And the free energy is in the cold. And it's in the non-friction side. And as long as we keep looking for free energy in the friction side of things where we have to blow something up or destroy something or set something on fire to gain energy or create energy. We'll never have free energy because that's not where it is. Free energy is in the cold side of things, on the other side of the spectrum. And I'm not going to get involved in that, but think of the yin and the yang, think of fractals and spirals, think of Fibonacci sequence and the golden mean ratio, and those are your aspects. Okay. And the smooth aspect is where the freedom is, but they can't create there. Because they can't create there because they're nefarious, they have to go to the friction side because that's the only place destruction, control, and manipulation. They can't create with the heart chakra, so they can't create free energy. There is some that they have figured out how to do it, but it's always with the help of people like Nikola Tesla when they stole all his stuff, and then furthering that, and they find people that are in service to others, and those people are the ones who help them until they get realizing that these people in service to self are trying to weaponize it, and that's when they leave. But they keep bringing in new bodies all the time with people that are still asleep and don't know what's going on, and they keep over and over and over using these people and gaining more and more knowledge, and then trading that knowledge for more knowledge to aliens from another planet or another reality or both to get more and more information. So, like I said before, when you look at the Viking pantheon, we are the dwarves under the mountain that they are forcing under slave labor to build weapons of war for. That is what the human race has been doing for the Orion Crusaders for generations, hundreds of thousands of years. But they didn't have boots on the ground until 1938, and then that extrapolates back. We talked about that. Here you have to have a past, present, and a future because it gets separated the second you're in this reality, three-dimensional reality. So even if I were literally outside this reality right now, where outside this reality, space and time, the continuum is all one, so time is not separated. Past, present, and future all happens right this moment. I have a past, present, and a future that goes back hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years. When I come down to Earth and I enter into this reality, and I do it legally, I have to have a past and a present and a future that has to separate from the now. So everything that already is has to be was and is not yet and is now. So when they got here in 1938, because we are now 70, almost 100 years, 80 years hence, almost 90 years hence, from 1938, that means that they had to have a past that was not just that 100 years difference. They had to have a past from the moment they got here. So that's why it looks like they've been here for hundreds of thousands of years and that we've been trapped for hundreds of thousands of years, when in truth we've only been trapped for about 85. But the souls that are on this planet were affected because their past had to go back into the past. And that's when they went and they planted things back, like Zechariah Stitchin's translations and things like that. They made sure Moses, with the Ten Commandments, they made sure to plant stuff in their past because they had access, because they had to have a past. That means they had to exist on this planet then. And so they were nefarious then, just like they're nefarious now, just like they were nefarious in the future. So we're outliving them. They're already gone again, but their future is still here from when they existed here. Do you understand? So they're going to be born here because a part of them is going to be born here in the future over and over and over. But the physical people that came here, the beings, are no longer on this planet. They were only here for a very short time. But the planet's still stuck for the time they were infected for. And that's equal past, future from the present when they got here. And that's a concept that people don't understand. Okay, and then some people get locked into the whole temporal war and think that there's only one outcome in the future, and that's the one where the AI is in control and the human race has got a low population. That's only one outcome that only nefarious people or people that are still stuck in that way are going to go to, because people, when the majority ascends, the people that are here in 3D reality, you're not going to be stuck here, not going to be left behind. They want you to believe that. The Left Behind series, although in and of itself, just like all the religions, had a great base in helping people, the truth of peddling the fear, anytime you peddle fear, left behind, doom and gloom, that peddling of the fear is doing their job. If you don't get baptized, you're not going to heaven. You will be left behind. If you're not one of the chosen, you'll be left behind. The whole Left Behind series was peddling fear to you. It was to motivate you into becoming, bettering yourself. But in the same sense, the dual aspect of all things, it's also telling you you're going to be left behind because you're by yourself now and you're behind now and you're useless and you're worthless And it applies to your ego to tell you all these crazy things in your head, which keep you occupying in the 3D and being afraid and living in fear, which keeps you unbalanced and it keeps you in a low vibration. So that's why whenever somebody is talking negatively and they say things negatively, even though they're trying to help people, I'm like, you're not as awake as you think you are, because you're actually, if you know anything about laws of attraction and how all that works, the fact that you're reinstilling negative ideology to people by saying you are not going to go to heaven, you're going to go to hell. Well, that's what they want you to do. There was no hell until it was created here. Hell is never in heaven. Heaven is down on earth. Heaven is where hell is, and hell is down on earth. So that is a truism. There was no hell until it was created. There was no devil until it was created, and it was created using guilt. And these religions use guilt to guilt you into your chairs. You don't want to know knowledge because look what happened when Adam and Eve learned knowledge. So I'll tell you what you need to know, which is the righteous knowledge only. I won't tell you any of that evil knowledge from Satan, who tricked the trickster, who tricked those people. So they tell you a little bit of truth with all the lies. They do the same thing in every aspect that is guilt-ridden. And if it's guilt-based knowledge that they're giving you, then it is not, whether they know it or not, they are the ones who are more of the problem than the solution. A solution is you're free, you are great, you are beautiful, you are the creator, and you are love. And there are people on this planet who have taught that. 100% of them who taught that on a major scale has been murdered by other humans on this planet for doing so. Okay? Mohammed, they tried to kill him, he got away. Mahatma Gandhi, they shot him right through the heart and killed him. Jesus Christ, they stabbed him in his spleen and strung him up and beat him and whipped him and tortured him and stuck him up on a cross until he died. Right? You look at Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King was teaching what? Freedom. He was teaching peace. He was teaching love. And what did they do? They shot him through the fucking heart because of doing it. Stephen Biko in South Africa was teaching the same thing. Most of you don't know his name. And he was killed. They actually just brought him up and gave him credit, by the way. And he was hung, just like Jeffrey Epstein, hung in his cell and committed suicide by his shoestrings in his cell. That all the cameras were turned off, and there was 2 inept guards who fell asleep at the time. When it happened, no one was able to get to them until he was dead. Weird. That's exactly the same modus operandi that killed Epstein. Was it Epstein? Whatever the guy's name was. And these people throughout time, you can look throughout time and you'll see the same thing happen. They were tortured and they were killed. And it was because what? They were teaching love. Right? They were teaching peace. They weren't teaching war. They were resisting. They wanted Jesus. There were people in Jesus's group that wanted him to lead the Jews in a rebellion. And he said, no, that's not what we're here for. No. He refused. And it pissed them off that he wouldn't do that. And even the Romans were like, so you're the king, are you? You're the rebellion leader. He's like, no, I am not. You're saying that. He said that to Pilate. You're saying that. You're calling me that. I never called myself that. I never said I was God. I'm the Son of Man. Those were his words. Right? Muhammad said the same, and they came after him, but he ascended before they could string him up. He knew what was going to happen. He saw the sacrifice, and he said, I'm not doing that. That's not my job. I already did what I came here to do. They'll remember me. And he left, and there's a whole religion. But then they corrupted it. They do that with everything. Look what they did with David and everything that happened there. Look what they did with everybody. All the religions. They take the religion. It's a great idea when it starts, and they corrupt it, turn it into guilt, fear, and oppression. And they take away your knowledge and your ability to gain knowledge. And they tell you, we'll give you the salvation. We'll tell you what you need to know. Because the little truth with that is we all need guidance. Otherwise, we become these aborigines who build an aircraft with a prop plane and think it's the chariots of the gods. That's why that's why what's his name called that book, The Chariots of the Gods, by the way. And we say that must be the modus operandi of the gods. And if I do this thing, which it looked like the gods did, and how many people were murdered in Central America, because they were told that their blood was royalty. Now we know that it's our DNA that is royalty, but they didn't understand DNA. And if they would have said to you, your DNA, they wouldn't have known what it meant. So they said your blood, because what is our DNA? Our blood, our life's blood. So then they were killing people, sacrificing them, thinking the gods would return. Okay, so people who are uneducated and who are childlike or children in their minds are going to do childlike things. God's angry with us. We need to sacrifice people to make him to appease the God. Where did God ever say that when God was here? If God did say that when God was here, that's not a God. Because a God is somebody who loves people. Because a God should not be someone who's full of ego, who thinks like a human. Because that's a human. That's 3D thinking. But if you're a child, you don't know that. Because your parents say, do as I say, not as I do. Right? Because your parents are children too. They think they're adults because I'm a grown-ass man. I'm a grown-ass woman. Anybody who says that or thinks that, you are not. Because if you are, you don't have to say it. You don't have to prove that you're a grown-ass adult because people around you know you are. Because you act like one, you think like one, you walk like one, you talk like one. So you have to say that I'm a grown-ass man. That is a child speaking. Okay? I'll tell you what you do. You do what I tell you to do, not what I say. That is a child speaking to another child. The difference between the two is one has a body that's older than the other one, but they're both children. Know that. All right, guys. I love you. I got to go. It's getting late. It's almost 7. I got to get dinner. I got to close the windows because Mom's got the window open, blind still, and it's bugging her. So I got to take care of that, get some dinner in her, and get her ready for going to bed in a few hours. I love you guys. Have a great night. I'll see you guys next week. But ponder what I said. Go back and listen to what I said. You'll understand it more. Because I just spoke again in 7 more parables to get the point across that Ra was just getting across in the last 7 questions that we just discussed. And then we'll move into the next session next week and move on from there. And if you guys think, those of you who think I ramble too much, pay attention. One of the things that I said to you, you'll understand. And then if you really pay attention, you realize I spoke in parables. And I was saying the same thing, different ways, coming at it from all the different ways from the 7 archetypes that are the 7 ways that you all learn from. Some of you learn from more than one way because you've learned that, and others only learn one way. One of the things I said to you is going to ring true, and you're going to get it. Don't feel bad if you don't get the other ones. It's just not the way you learn. It's not your fault. I had to learn how I learned. I had to learn how is it that I learned. Same thing. How is it that I love? How is it that I express myself? How is it that I figure myself out? Those are the things that we have to figure out about ourselves. Have a great night. Have a great weekend. And may your God go with you. Peace.